Hello and welcome to the 2016 International Trade Forum, brought to you by Maryland, D.C. District Export Council. My name is Kelly Leonard and I am the moderator for today's event. I'm excited to be here to kick off this event, and I'd like to present to you a special guest who will be sharing some opening remarks. Before we introduce you to David Petter, just want to give you some quick background and point of reference. David Petter is the first president and CEO of the Montgomery County Economic Development Corporation, a new public-private enterprise here in our region. David joins MCEDC from the Central Florida Development Council, where he successfully transitioned that organization from a public-private partnership to a private organization while achieving record-setting job creation and capital investment results. We're excited to have David's unique talent and expertise here in Montgomery County. So help me welcome Mr. David Petter.
What a wonderful welcome. Thank you so much for having me today, and welcome to this very inspiring event. I know it'll be a day of learning and gaining expertise in developing our economy here in Montgomery County. As we've begun the EDC, well, we've been there for about 90 days now, and as they say, I'm drinking from the fire hose, and I see incredible opportunity for business development outside of Montgomery County. When you think about what we're going to do as economic developers at the MCEDC, we're going to retain and expand business, we're going to recruit and market for new business opportunities, and we're going to create an environment for innovation and entrepreneurship here in Montgomery County. I asked my team to pull together a few statistics that I thought would be inspiring not only to this group, but also the group that's watching this from far and away online and through broadcast channels. When you think about Montgomery County, you might not realize that 40% of our residents are bilingual. 32% of our population are foreign-born residents. That's really incredible to have that diversity. Out of the top 10 diverse cities in the United States, Montgomery County holds 4 of those spots, as well as the #1 spot, which is Gaithersburg. There are more than 160 foreign headquartered companies that have a presence in Montgomery County. We have an unmatched location and offer proximity to 176 resident embassies and key U.S. and international decision makers and partners. Think about that access we have to that federal government here in Montgomery County. Some notable international companies that are here include GlaxoSmithKline, MedImmune, ProMedic Biotherapeutics, BAE Systems, Quigen, Thales Communications, Join Laboratories, and Sodexo, just to name a few. We are 2 hours or less by air from 60% of our North American market, which is pretty incredible. We're served, as you know, by 3 international airports, which allow us to reach 35 international destinations nonstop to 30 foreign countries, which is truly incredible when you think about that reach. Obviously, we have our ports, we have our strong talent, we have everything we need as far as assets to drive development on the international front and beyond. I'm very honored to be here today, honored to be among this group to help me drive development with our group at the MCEDC, and thank you for being here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, David. We received some really great letters from the Congressional delegate, and I just would love to share with you a few opening remarks from Senator Cardin, as well as Senator-elect Van Hollen and Congressman John Delaney. So the first letter, a portion of it reads, "The impact of international trade is especially visible in my home state of Maryland." This letter is from Senator Cardin, which has 4 foreign trade zones as well as the Port of Baltimore. In 2014, the port, which supports nearly 60,000 jobs, oversaw 29.5 million tons of international cargo worth more than $52.5 billion. Every year, over 7,300 Maryland companies export materials to 209 countries through the port. And the Export-Import Bank alone supports $1 billion in international trade activity in the state. Additional comments: almost 800,000 Maryland jobs are dependent upon international trade, and the overwhelming majority of these businesses are small and medium, so you're in the right place. And finally, they all express their pride to support and ensure that all American small business, including minority-owned, veteran-owned, and women-owned businesses, are not only able to participate in federal contracting opportunities, but also have access to critical resources to capital needed to expand their businesses both domestically and abroad. So I definitely thank the congressional delegate for their support, and I know we have a representative of Congressman Delaney's office here in the audience with us. If we could just have you give a wave and stand so that everyone can see. So awesome. Thank you so much for your time and being here. Thank you to all of you that are here in the live studio, as well as those participating through the live stream. So now, the moment you all have been waiting for, the start of the panel. And so our first panel is going to focus on finding business beyond Americans' borders. During this time together, we'll highlight how companies can break into new foreign markets, specifically how these companies find opportunities, how they promote themselves, and how to ensure that they're doing business with the right people. And so to kick off this panel, I'd like to introduce to you our panelists. First, we have Carl Livesay. Carl is a longtime member of the District Export Council, serving currently as the vice chairman. An inaugural student of Export Tech, Carl has returned as an instructor and most recently an evaluator of the Export Tech business plans. He brings a unique perspective to the deck as a customer, an exporter, and a member. In addition to being vice president of operations for Land, Sea, Air Manufacturing, Carl serves on a number of advisory boards. Next to him is Kimberly Brown. Kimberly is the founder and CEO of Baltimore County-based Amethyst Technologies. With offices in Tanzania and Ghana, the Amethyst team is changing the world by providing quality assurance, compliance services, and business process improvements for clinical trials, global health, manufacturing, biodefense, and research. In addition to serving on several boards and the President's U.S. Africa Business Council, Kimberly has created a nonprofit affiliate organization, Global Outcomes, which focuses on global health, STEM education, and economic empowerment. Welcome, Kimberly. Sierra Silkman is the president of Baltimore-based Hemiosol International, a distributor of specialty detergents and industrial cleaning agents. The company currently has dealers and sub-dealers located throughout the US, Canada, Europe, and Asia. Currently, more than 75% of the company's business is overseas, and this year, the company is expected to more than double its 5-year average. In 2013, Sierra was appointed by the U.S. Secretary of Commerce to serve a 4-year term on the Maryland, D.C. District Export Council. So welcome to our panelists. I want to kick this off by just sharing a general question that all three of you can feel free to answer. Briefly tell us about your business, and then also what are some of your greatest export challenges, and finally, how did you overcome some of these challenges? Carl?
Okay. Well, thank you, Kelly. We appreciate the opportunity to be here. I represent Land, Sea, Air Manufacturing. We're a small aerospace manufacturer of complex geometry, close tolerance, assemblies, components, and products in Westminster, Maryland. We manufacture flight critical components for corporate aircraft primarily. And the second part of your question was?
What are some of your greatest challenges?
So for us as a business relative to international travel, our challenges are the regulations. Regulatory compliance is not that we are not compliant. It's not that we don't understand compliance. It's that we really don't know what we don't know. So we leverage the resources that are available through the federal government, through the state government, frankly, to keep us abreast. Because when you go into a new country, or you're going to pursue a market that you haven't tried to address, there are certainly regulatory issues. You know, an apple is not always an apple. And then there's also cultural differences, and you have to be sensitive to the cultural uniqueness of the country that you're looking to market to. You don't want to come across as a brash American. You've kind of got to be it's much more of a soft sell, and it's a slightly longer process. So we rely heavily, frankly, on the coaching from other people that have gone through, gone down that path before us, and in particular, the people from the U.S. Export Assistance Center and the Maryland Commerce in their international trade area.
Awesome. Thank you. Kimberly?
Thank you and good morning. Amethyst Technologies provides engineering services. We provide quality assurance assistance for compliance to FDA regulations, for World Health Organization regulations and ISO. We develop software and improve systems for laboratories. 95% of our business until this year was U.S. Army support. We started in Montgomery County. Our first client was Walter Reed, where we provided services for vaccine development. And after 2 years as a prime contractor to U.S. Army, we were given the opportunity to run the malaria program in Tanzania. And for 7 years, as a small business, we ran a program where we trained medical professionals in East Africa. We developed strategies to roll out diagnostics programs, supporting critical malaria programs. So in 2012, when there were some challenges and with contracting, we looked at ways to expand our business overseas. We had past performance, we were setting up laboratories, there's a need for laboratories in Africa. So we saw an opportunity to expand beyond just providing services to owning our own laboratories, to really developing our footprint in Africa and using our talents to develop laboratories, pharmaceutical manufacturing facilities, and also medical centers in areas that need these types of facilities. We saw an opportunity in Africa, and the challenge was to raise funds. Initially, we looked in the U.S. to try to raise funds for 4 laboratories in West Africa, and we quickly realized it was going to be difficult. So what we were able to do is, in the 3 countries that we were initially starting our projects, we were able to identify local partners who wanted to invest in the programs. So now we're excited. We're in construction in Ghana. We're in design in Liberia and Sierra Leone. And we're moving projects forward with the help of the U.S. government and also with strong partners in the countries that we're working in.
Awesome. Thank you. Sierra?
Good morning. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for having us. As was mentioned, my name is Sierra Silkman. I am the president of Hemasol International. We are a manufacturer and distributor of specialty chemicals, mostly used in the healthcare, electronics, pharmaceutical, food and beverage, and laboratory industries. We are based out of Towson, Maryland, and 75% of our business is overseas, mostly in Asia. We've been there for about 25 years, and we are continuing to grow over there. Some of our biggest challenges right now as we move into new markets and as we try to expand in Asia are, as Carl mentioned, regulatory is always a concern when you're a chemicals manufacturer, especially because OSHA, and there's lots of new regulations that are coming down the pike that are expanding not only in the US and Europe, but also in Asia. Another issue that we constantly are struggling with and is finding good partners and distributors overseas. That's of concern when you're a small to medium-sized company looking to expand. Another issue that we face quite often overseas is customs and shipping. Things have been changing in the customs and shipping area. There's new Incoterms. There's new things that we need to be aware of, especially when we're cross-shipping or trans-shipping goods from country to country. So those 3 are probably the largest, biggest issues, concerns, things that we deal with on almost a daily basis, quite frankly. Carl also mentioned you have to be concerned and aware of cultural differences. That is an issue for us as well. And language barriers, time zones are also another issue. And actually lately, one of the largest issues that we've been confronted with has been currency and currency fluctuations in the markets that we are dealing with and how that's affecting the US dollar. That's something that we are very, very focused on, something that we have been following quite closely, especially with what's going on in China, what's going on in Taiwan, and how that's affecting trade internationally.
So then, Sierra, you mentioned a number of challenges. How have you traditionally and or currently, how are you overcoming some of those challenges?
Oftentimes, when we face challenges, as I have mentioned, we work very closely with the DEC. We work closely with USIAC. We work closely with the Maryland Department of Commerce. We have representatives that will help us, guide us through those issues. They have a plethora of knowledge. They also have in-country representatives that we work closely with and that we can call and say, hey, we're having an issue with customs. Our stuff is stuck in customs, or we are having a problem with regulatory in China, or we're having issues with distributors fighting amongst themselves. How do we deal with this? And so we will go to our representatives that we deal with in these organizations, and they will help guide us through. It's been through these issues, and it's been extremely helpful. I can't stress that enough. We rely on them heavily. Like I said, we're an SME, so we are very limited in our resources, and we need those partners to help guide us through. DEC has also, District Export Council, has also been extremely important to us because there are lots of people on the DEC that have mentored us and that we've met with regularly who have experience in the areas that we're challenged in. And so they've been able to give us their guidance, they've been able to give us recommendations, and it's always good, and I like to stress this as well, it's always good to find a company that's slightly larger than you to be your mentor. And I can't stress that enough because we thought we could do it on our own for a little while, and then we met people who had more experience than us and realized, okay, we really need someone to help guide us through this process. And it is important to get connected with those folks, those organizations, and make sure that, you know, you're getting the help you need, because we're all in this together. We're all trying to grow. We're all trying to increase exports. And so it's really important to have those partnerships and those connections.
That's awesome, and thank you for making that comment, because I think the notion is that we're not all in this together. Like, if I share too much information, it may then impact my growth or my potential in the marketplace. So I think that's a wonderful point. Thank you for bringing that up. Now, Carl, back to you. As a manufacturer, what are some of the things that we should be considered prior to going international?
Well, one, that's a good question. One of the things is the profit margin. It's substantially higher for exported goods. And I can't stress that enough. The other thing is the market base is huge. You know, 80% of the global market is outside of the United States. And depending upon your particular industry, it could be substantially larger. So if you don't look outside, then you're essentially putting a lid on your opportunity as a business. The other thing you should consider, frankly, is that foreign countries, they love American-made products. There's a real affection, and they will pay more for it. Part of that is because of the standards that are associated with manufacturing in America. Part of it's because of the regulatory compliance. The quality is just better, you know, pound for pound. So you don't really have the hurdles relative to quality to go over or to overcome. But yeah, so I would say that, you know, it's the profitability, it's the market, and it's a better business deal because your competitors are coming from other countries and into America. So yes, it is offensive, meaning, you know, it's assertive from you to sell outside of the United States, but it's also a defensive move because with social media, with the internet, you know, there really are no more boundaries. There's no more borders that you can't overcome. So if you don't address the international market, your competitors will.
Okay. And now, traditionally, most of us have this way of when we think of going global and competing internationally, we think more from a product-based business. I make widgets, and so I should ship them out. Now, Kimberly, you entered the market from a service perspective, right? It sounds like, though, now you're diversifying a bit more, and maybe you've got a product or something that you're delivering. But as a service provider, what's it like to export services?
It's very different. As a service provider, we have to become one with our clients, our potential clients and our existing. So we have to be very integrated. We have to have a presence in every country. We have to have local staff. We have to set up offices. So that's one of the big differences when you're a service provider. But as a U.S. company, again, like Carl said, we are welcome with open arms in every country that we have approached, because the U.S. is synonymous with standards and quality and laboratories. As a U.S. Army contractor, when we go into a country, they know we're going to do a good thing. We're going to leave something behind that's sustainable, something that meets all the standards, the U.S. standards, the international standards. So definitely we see an opportunity. And as a small business, when we go overseas, no one looks at us as a small business. We're amethysts. They look at us for what we've done, what we can do, and the commitment that we have to each country that we're in. So if you're looking at a service, you have to really be prepared to have boots on the ground. I spend about 50% of my time in Africa, in multiple countries. Every other month I'm there. So that's the type of commitment that it requires as a service company.
Now let's stay on that for a moment, because you talk about traveling and the amount of time that you're there. What's it, and in Africa, it sounds like you work with a number of developing countries. And so as a small business, what's that like? So you've got the challenges of being a service provider, you've got the challenges of being a small company from the U.S. perspective, but then you're serving developing countries. So what's that been like, working in developing countries?
It's very rewarding. When you come in as a U.S., so we are a U.S. contractor. We support USAID. We run an HIV program in Tanzania. U.S. Army, we run numerous programs for them. So we have that support where we have offices, we have staff that are local in East and West Africa. So the main thing is really relying on your past performance and your staff to really augment your presence. So for example, supporting malaria programs. So we have worked with ministries of health, we work with military programs. So that gives us the knowledge, it gives us access, and it gives us past performance that we can use to leverage and really expand on the things that we want to do with building our own facilities.
Okay, awesome. Sierra, so hindsight's 20/20, right?
Yeah.
And because you're doing so much business internationally, if you could look through your crystal ball and do things a little bit differently, like what would you do differently, and or what recommendations would you make to people that are small businesses in particular that are looking to go global?
First of all, I'm going to start with what I would recommend. I'm a big proponent of practical solutions to problems. So let me give you a little bit of a formula for what we see as what you need to, what we would recommend that small businesses and medium-sized businesses do in order to be successful overseas. Number one, I would say make sure that you have a domestic business plan or a domestic model. Number two, I would say make sure you connect with the U.S. Export Assistance Center and go through their Export Tech program if you can. The Export Tech program is geared towards small and medium-sized businesses that are looking to go overseas or internationally, and they're going to help you put together a business plan for overseas or internationally. They're also going to help you figure out if your product or your service is a product or service that's one, can be exported, and number two, if it's going to do well in the countries that you're looking at. Because a lot of times as a SME, we'll look at a country and we'll say, oh, this is a great country, everybody's running there, it's expanding, there's a lot of business, let's go there. Well, that might not be the right market for you, or that might not be the right market for your product or your service. So the Export Tech program will help you really dig down, look at the nuts and bolts of your organization, and figure out, is the plan that you have in your mind really going to be successful for you in the marketplace? That would be my first two recommendations. Number three is, I would also, after you finish the Export Tech program, I would make sure you get a representative at USIAC to help you, or the U.S. Export Assistance Center. I would do a partnership search overseas. Once you have figured out which market you, one, want to go to, and two, it's going to be feasible for your company or your service that you want to export, they will help you find a viable, healthy, good partner. I stress that, because a lot of times people are going to come to you when you start going overseas, and they're going to say, oh, I'm a great partner, I can do this for you, I can do that for you, I will expand the marketplace exponentially for you, and that is not what happens. They hijack your product, they steal your intellectual property, they hijack your customers, they don't give you information, it becomes a nightmare, and I can attest to that because we had that issue happen to us overseas. So make sure that you work with them to find good partners and good connections overseas. That is extremely important. Another recommendation I would have is quickly get connected with the Maryland Department of Commerce. Sorry, they changed their name, so I have to make sure I say that correctly. Maryland Department of Commerce, because they have a grant program called the Maryland
Export MD.
Yeah, Export MD, sorry. I lost my train of thought. And that's a great program because it is going to help you go overseas. It's going to help you put the boots on the ground, like what was mentioned. Go visit the marketplaces, meet with the partners that USIAC has helped you establish relationships with. Export MD, we've actually been recipients of it twice. We've gone to different parts of the world. We've gone to Southeast Asia. We've gone to China. We've met with partners. We've expanded business. It's been a great program for us. It's actually a matching program, so you do have to put a little bit of funds up front, but they're going to match or reimburse the money that you put up front. It's a great program. You do have to apply for it, but I highly recommend it. If you follow some of these keys, or you test out some of these recommendations, I think you're going to find it's going to help you, because going international can be very frustrating. And the biggest thing that we had to learn is it is not a sprint. It is a marathon. And I see some people shaking their heads. I will give you an example. We started working with a company. We started getting introduced to a company 5 years ago. Okay, 5 years we've been working on this relationship. We are just now starting to make inroads to and starting to see some potential for sales. Now, when I say working with them, I mean like we are talking with them at least once a week, and giving them information, giving them products, giving them testing information. It's a real challenge to try to sometimes convert some of these international companies, because they want to vet you and you want to vet them and you want to make sure everything is working correctly. So it can be frustrating, and you really need to have some of these tools in your pocket in order to move forward.
So let's go back to something that you said, and I would like to pose the question to all of you, because I saw when I noticed you mentioned the word hijack intellectual property, I saw Carl shake his head like, oh boy. So have any of you experienced any sort of challenges around protecting your intellectual property? And if so, how have you addressed those challenges? Carl, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So yes, it is with some businesses internationally, it is a common business practice to replicate, steal, borrow, whatever phrase you choose to use. But the approach is they promise all these things that they're going to do, but here's what you've got to do first, which is basically kind of disclose the secret sauce associated with your products. And I've personally participated with several companies where this has happened, And in many cases, you warn them that you still need to keep that stuff close to the vest. American companies need to protect themselves. And so that's part of your decision, frankly, when you choose a country that you want to pursue as a new market. And that's one of the things that the U.S. Export Assistance Center does an absolutely fabulous job of. They'll help you identify countries that are stronger with the protection of intellectual property and where you have reach. But the U.S. Export Assistance Center, along with the District Export Council and others, will help you identify a legal team that can help you protect your intellectual property if you have intellectual property heading overseas. But one point I want to make, international trade is a team sport. This is not something you're going to do on your own. And I can't say this enough. You need to, as a small business in particular, there are an abundance of resources available, and there's a fair number of them in the room. The U.S. Export Assistance Center, they're the go-to. And they're kind of the broker, if you will, of all the other resources there have been for us. Maryland Commerce does a very nice job. You've got the Maryland Chamber of Commerce, which has got a new international program that they're growing, and that's a very valuable resource, and they've got a reach that's a little different than anybody else. But there's also other organizations that are service providers here in the United States, and in particular in the area. I mean, you've got groups like SC&H as an accounting firm. You've got McGladrey. It's really okay to talk to those people and just ask for some advice and participate in the seminars and the working sessions that they offer, because you may only grab one or two tidbits of information, but that's huge. And then leverage the resources that you have. Like with the DEC, we've got one of the companies that's a member of the DEC is Washington Labs, and the gentleman's name is Mike Violette. If you have anything that's electronic in any way, shape, or form, and you're taking it anywhere outside the United States, that's somebody you need to talk to, because he can save you tens of thousands of dollars right quick and in a hurry. It's, like I said, it's a team sport. So the thing that I would suggest to companies is, frankly, get connected, network, and leverage the resources. It really is a team sport in every sense of the word.
Awesome. Kimberly, IP issues?
Definitely. So the first thing is trade secrets. You have to keep your trade secrets close. As a small business, you can't afford to litigate in multiple countries. The time, if you look at the time it takes to litigate in the countries that we're working in, it's just, you'll never be successful if you're in that type of situation. Also, really understanding the laws in each country. Export.gov, when we first started looking at exporting, we research each country, so you can get information there. And then your partners. You have to have trustworthy partners. If not, you will not have a successful business venture. So using the Gold Key search that is provided by the Department of Commerce, Maryland Department of Commerce, where they can research your partners and provide information at no cost to you. We also use that system. And really also being present. Your partners, as a service company, our relationships are the most important thing. So we have to be at the table. We can't have anyone represent us. Every key meeting, every key event, we have to be there. So that's another thing. As a service company, you have to have time, FaceTime with all of your clients. No one can do that for you. So when you have those relationships, then you're not at risk for someone coming behind you and taking your clients and taking your business. So we really haven't had any problems because we have very, very good partners. And it's a very small world. For example, in Liberia, our partner, I found out after we met, he went to University of Maryland. He has an engineering degree like I do. He was in the U.S. Army. He served in Iraq. So in every case, we have these partners that they may live on the other side of the world, but there's some connection. We don't have any partners that we're not connected to in a real sense. So really work on your partners. And there are many, many good partners, many like-minded business professionals. So that's not something that has hindered us. We've actually used it as an advantage and have had amazing success with our partners who have brought land to our projects, they've brought cash to our projects. So it's really worked out well.
Now, Sierra, on the IP question, do you take advantage of any patents, or what types of ways do you work to protect your intellectual property?
Intellectual property is a very tough subject, especially when you're dealing with certain countries overseas. One of the things that I find very interesting is that our product has brand recognition overseas. And any slight change in any way, shape, or form, even to the packaging, a few years ago we changed the name on our label, and there was an uproar because they are very sensitive to knockoffs. They are very sensitive to anything that could potentially say your product or your brand's name on it, but not actually be your product or your brand. So we have to be very cognizant and aware of any changes we make, in that regard. We haven't necessarily had any true issues with IP or anyone stealing patents or formulations or any of those types of things. However, one of the key reasons, and I think one of the most important things to do when you're going overseas with a product, is make sure you have distributor agreements in place. When we first started exporting about 25 years ago, everything we did was on a handshake before I came to the company. And that was all well and good back then, but the world has changed. Things have become more competitive. People are looking for an edge. And so about 10 years ago, we decided that in order to really make sure that we have a good handle on where our product is going, how our product's being communicated, and to make sure that we didn't have any IP issues, we put into place some very stringent distributor and partnership agreements. Now, these partnership agreements are probably about 25 pages long. They address IP, they address all sorts of patent issues, branding issues, and we have the partners sign those. And in return, they get certain perks, they get certain incentives, and vice versa. We get certain incentives and certain perks too. So there's a definite relationship building through the distributor partnership. At first I thought it was going to be a real problem. It was going to make it seem as if we didn't trust our distributors, we didn't trust our partners, but actually it's done the opposite. It's actually strengthened those relationships. So I would highly, highly recommend that. Make sure you have agreements in place. Don't take their word for it. Don't take a handshake. Make sure you have those agreements in place before you really start developing that relationship with those partners or those distributors.
So we're going to talk profitability for a moment. And while we're getting ready to ask this question, I invite the folks that are in the studio, if you have a question, feel free to proceed to the back of the room, and then we will allow you to come up to the microphone to ask your questions. So feel free to begin that process. But the question that I want to ask is, Carl, you alluded to profit margin and the benefits of international, going global, and from a profit margin perspective. How can small manufacturers overcome some of the cost barriers associated with going global?
That's a great question, and there are a lot. When we first started to explore international trade, there are a lot of barriers to success. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to sound like I'm throwing rocks at consultants, but you can find consultants everywhere that'll sell you the same information that the USIAC and Maryland Commerce will provide for you at no charge. Mm-hmm. When we were very fortunate to get connected with the U.S. Export Assistance Center, and they helped us navigate through the learning experience, and that's really the first step. And one of the things that Sierra mentioned was this export tech class. I can't emphasize that enough. If you have any interest in exporting at all, you really should take part in that class. It's very economical, and you're going to be exposed to people that are exclusively interested in your success. And that's what's unique, Kelly, about the U.S. Export Assistance Center. Their sole goal is to help you succeed. Mm-hmm. they're not billing you for the time. It's not a revenue generating activity. The same thing happens with Maryland Commerce. The same thing happens with the District Export Council, the Maryland Chamber of Commerce. And those people are very well connected and are very willing to provide you with the advice that you need to get started. Now, what they will do is they'll coach you. Now, notice I said coach and not do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you want someone to do it for you, yeah, you're going to pay full tilt and you're going to hire a consultant, and you can certainly do that, and that works too if you've got that kind of money. But what we did is we leveraged those resources, and then they helped steer us towards multifaceted events like international trade shows. In our business, we're in the aerospace and defense industry. We attend like the Paris Air Show and the Farnborough Air Show, and we do use the Export MD grant whenever possible. And by being part of the Maryland delegation, in our case, they help you. They act as an agent for you to help introduce you to targeted customers. So it's in our best interest and in small businesses' best interest to help those people understand as much as they can about your business, and they become an extension of your sales force. It's a force multiplier, really what it boils down to. And they've got people that are in country, and if you stay in contact with them, and we do, they're always on the prowl for new opportunities because they're trying to do the same thing you are, which is cultivate business for us as American companies. So I can't speak highly enough about those things. It is still expensive compared to domestic marketing, but it is nowhere near as expensive as it could be.
Okay, awesome. First question.
Hi, my name is Zachary Carruthers. I'm with Channing Essentials. My question to you all is, how can a company take their product and export it overseas and make it cost efficient for product testing?
Who'd like to take that one?
Can you explain a little bit about when you say make it efficient or make it?
Like cost efficiency, like to make sure that it doesn't get too costly to send my products overseas to my international product testers.
So I guess the question I would have, I'll take that first. I don't understand why you would think that your product is too costly to be sold overseas, because in most cases, frankly, they'll pay more for it overseas than they will domestically. So the margins are higher, the retail cost is higher. That's a very common practice. So without knowing a little bit more about what your product is, if your product is a manufactured item, like a hard goods, I would certainly make sure that it was compliant, with the electrical specifications or the finishing requirements, those kinds of things. And you can use organizations like the one I mentioned before. Washington Labs does a great job of that kind of stuff. They can provide you with some of the advice. The District Export Council will help you find testing organizations. You do have to pay for it,
Of course.
because that's a service that's unique to you. But short of that, the margins and the retail costs, I wouldn't be concerned about the price of the item. I wouldn't start discounting it simply because you're selling it internationally. Not at all.
I was kind of more referring to the shipping of it, not the actual cost.
Transportation costs.
Yeah, the transportation costs, I should say,
That's
for
a-
that exporting side.
That's a very good question. And the transportation costs are substantial depending upon the size of the product, but typically the customer will pay that.
Okay.
They pay the landed, the landing costs, so it's FOB. In our case, it's FOB our dock. So, we'll ship it however you like.
All right. Thank you.
I'd like to just add some things to that, because our product actually is very bulky. It's very, very heavy, and it costs us a lot to ship overseas just because it's so dense. We ship a powder, so you can just imagine how heavy that is and how costly that can get. I would recommend working with, where are you located?
Here in Baltimore.
In Baltimore, okay. There's some really great local freight forwarders
Right.
that can help you. I can throw one out right now. JS Connor, we work
Oh,
with
yeah.
them extensively. They will shop it around and try to find you the best rate. I don't recommend, depending on how big your product is and how heavy it is, we use primarily ocean freight. It's very inexpensive. Also, FedEx has a great program called FedEx Great Rates, and we will use them periodically as well if we have to get something air freighted quickly and inexpensively. So if you call them and you ask for a representative and you say, I'd like to learn more about the FedEx Great Rates program, what that program is that they will give you, if you're not extremely time sensitive, like you can ship within, say, like, oh, I can ship in this window, 10-day window, it doesn't matter what day, it doesn't matter when, they will find you the cheapest rate on an airline, one of their airlines or their airplanes, and ship it overseas for you. And it's very, very reasonable. We've been using it for about 5 years now. I would highly recommend it. It's just a fraction of the cost of what it would cost you to air freight. So those two resources, I think, would be very helpful to start with. And if you want to talk more about some other freight forwarders that we use, because we've used lots of different ones with lots of different pricing, I'd be more than happy to talk to you about that later.
Can I offer one more point? One of the things, if your product is large and bulky, and Sarah brought up a really good point, make sure that your freight forwarder is pushing that freight through the Maryland port. If it's at all possible, go through the Maryland port, because one of the things that we've learned is your freight forwarder gets commissions that are substantially different from neighboring ports. So the local port is typically not the one they make the most money on, because the competition's the greatest. Okay,
Makes
so if you just give your product, now Connor doesn't do that. They're a local company, and they I know those people very well. They're just phenomenal people to do business with. But some of the others will route your freight through Pennsylvania, or down south, down even into Georgia, because they get more money to do that, and it costs you more. They're passing along those costs to you, but they get a much more significant level of compensation as opposed to going through Maryland. So I would push to have your product exported through the Port of Baltimore. Port of Baltimore is one of the top ports in the country, and they're very, very competitive, and ask for justification why it can't go if it's a bulky product.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Next question.
Good morning. Ashok Kapoor from Hawkeye Medical. We are a medical equipment supply provider trying to start exporting. If you could, there are so many countries out there where you could export. How did you find the very first country to export to build your reputation? Then you can expand to other countries.
So for us, it was a country that we had a strong connection with. We had a partner, someone I went to school with, who was in Ghana. So that made it much easier, was well connected, was in business. So really, you have to have somebody who can, facilitate what you need in the local country. And then you have to have a country that is open to doing business with you. So really, doing your research, looking at who your competition is, just like you do here. Developing your business plan is key in any country. And there's also, export.gov, you can look at, the Commerce has done a really good job with, all the details with, each particular country. Also, World Bank, we use World Bank and CIA fact books. They have current, 90-day information. So it even changes based on what's going on in the country, the political risk. So those are the three sources that we use to really look at the country and determine if it's a good fit.
I would also say, see if you can find a domestic partner that ships overseas and has presence overseas already, because that's actually how we started about 25 years ago. We had a relationship with a domestic partner who was doing business overseas, and that is how we first got our feet wet. And it was a lot less traumatic because we dealt with them here in the US and they dealt with the foreign partners overseas, and so we were able to communicate with them real time. They were able to field any issues overseas. And there's a lot of, since you're in the medical field, there's a lot of small, medium-sized, and large medical companies that are shipping overseas. Just a few of the ones I can think of, like BWR, Cardinal Health, Medline, places like that. So if there's any way that you can get connected with them, they'll help you get your products overseas when they have orders for overseas products. The other thing to also be aware of is possibly if there's any way to become a subcontractor on a GSA contract, that'll help you get your product overseas too. And there's lots of databases online and lots of different places that you can look that they'll say, this is what we're looking for, this is the time frame, and submit your bid, submit your contract or whatever, and they'll look at that. So that's another way to do it, instead of trying to do it on your own automatically, just going over. Sometimes you can be successful that way too, but we found that having that domestic relationship first helped us overseas, and then once we got over there and our brand was kind of building itself, we thought, okay, we're going to go direct now. So then we went direct, and that really helped us.
Charlie, you want to go?
Yeah, we use the U.S. Export Assistance Center because they know where all the bones are buried. And frankly, they recommended to us, based on the products that we were manufacturing, that we go after the UK. And I will tell you that shipping to the UK is like shipping to Pennsylvania. It's really no more difficult. Depending upon, so while you're learning about exporting, start small. Start with a more friendly country, where there's more of a reciprocal agreement. And frankly, the advice that they'll give you, or that they gave us, was look for ones that had a fewer number of restrictions and were more attracted to commerce back and forth with the U.S. And for us, that happened to be the UK, and then there were several other countries after that. But the U.S. Export Assistance Center can help you with that enormously, which is where the information from export.gov comes from. It's just they've got people in the country, and they'll be. It's ridiculous how supportive they'll be if you'll expose, your business to them, and if you spend the time, if you'll invest the time with them, for them to understand your business, they become an advocate for you globally. It's like an extension of your sales force.
So you mentioned friendly country, like you mentioned the UK. So are there others on that sort of short list? I know the state of Maryland, we have sister cities. Would they be considered like friendly countries?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
At least not in our case.
Okay.
So we manufacture aerospace products, but we also do defense products. And if you think it's hard to export medical equipment, you should try taking missile parts out of the U.S. Right? So you have to look at a lot of the other indicators. All right. So in our business, the UK was one. Turkey, believe it or not, is friendly. There's Brazil, although Brazil's got a very strong manufacturing base, so they don't really import a whole lot. And then from the UK, we started to spread out into other countries within the European community. Italy is good, and that's just for us, for the types of products. So we looked at who had the need, and in particular, we looked at the indicators that were provided by the U.S. Export Assistance Center as to whose markets are growing, what are the budgets, what's the defense budget, what's the aerospace budget, who's building what, and where do we have something to sell. And then with that, we had the commercial service agents, and they've got them all over the planet. Those folks are phenomenal. That is their business. A lot of people don't realize everything that goes in or out of those countries goes across the desk of the commercial service agent or officer. So they have a lot more pull in country than you might think. So if they tell you that, these are good people, if they tell you this is a good place for your particular product, take that as gospel.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
It's a nice looking tie.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Chris Majuru, and I'm a consultant for Liberty Approach and Allied Consults, president and founder. www.libertyconsults.com. My question is for Ms. Kimberly Brown of Amethyst Technology. You deal with, I guess, medical technology as far as pharmaceuticals technology in different neighboring, different African countries, Tanzania and so forth. How did you get the? I wanted to know how did you get the? How do you work with that when there's limited, in some countries there's limited infrastructure in place to get these technologies off the ground? How did you overcome that?
That's the good thing about being a defense contractor is you have to be able to deal with power, water, roads, lack of capacity, human resources. So that became our area of expertise, going into rural places and developing healthcare to US FDA standards to support a vaccine trial. So that's one of the benefits as being a defense contractor, is those are the normal things that you have to deal with, logistics. So we use our expertise, our experience in that fashion to expand to working with African governments. We're setting up a cancer center in rural Kenya with US-based partners, building these laboratories. So again, having experience, like I think we've all mentioned, finding a way in, leveraging something that you're good at, leveraging, and identify, connecting the dots, your strengths with a need, and that's really what we've done. So there are many ways for partnerships. For example, if infrastructure, these countries, there's hospitals, there's laboratories, there's schools. Everyone is managing with the existing infrastructure. So really understanding how things work, spending time on the ground, and really being able to do things differently. One of the challenges is a U.S. company, we're used to certain systems here that work very, very well. But when you go to other places, there aren't necessarily the same types of systems.
That's right.
So being able to adapt, being able to really look at the big picture, being able to creatively find ways to be efficient. So that's really the challenge we have. And as an engineer, we're engineers, so we're used to problem solving. We actually like that. I mean, that's what we like to do. So we took something that's a challenge and made it our core business's challenges.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we're coming to the end of our time together. And so for those of you that have questions, we'll take one more question, but then keep in mind that at the end of our formal program, we will have a networking session as well. So you'll have an opportunity to ask more questions of the resources that are here.
Hi, good morning. My name is Anthony Goodsmith from Standard Medical Systems, and we're also in the healthcare field. We also are a veteran-owned small business for about 10 years. So we would definitely like to find out what are the barriers to exporting. We have 2 countries in mind, in West Africa and Ivory Coast, Benin, Togo, Equatorial Guinea, and also Brazil. We have some distributors that we have made agreements with. I know you made that an important point. We have that in place, and we also have some agreements with the VA and DoD market. So my question to you are, what are some of the barriers to selling medical equipment, pharmaceuticals, diagnostic devices, et cetera?
Cost. Understanding who buys. So in the U.S., there's health insurance and there's a system. In many of the countries you mentioned, everything is out of pocket. So also donors. Ministries of health depend on donor funding. So really understanding who buys. That was kind of the wake-up call for us because we know there's a need for our services. And I think we've been in 13 African countries, and we've met with leadership and ministries and commercial services. We've met with everyone in these countries. And at first, we weren't moving forward the way we thought that we would because we know that there's the need. And then we quickly realized who buys. So in many countries, USAID is providing 40–50% of the health budget. So if you understand that, then instead of marketing necessarily to the government, it needs to go to USAID. So health is very, very different because it's donor funded. It's DFID, it's USAID, it's World Bank, it's Global Fund. So really understanding who buys the particular equipment, the drugs that you're really trying to sell. If they're in TB, HIV, malaria, that's Global Fund. If it's hypertensive drugs, if it's diabetes, then that would be the local government. So it takes a little bit of research really to understand who exactly is buying, and then who is your competition. Many of the countries that we work in, the main competition is Chinese companies and Indian companies when it comes to health. That's pretty much across the board. So you have to be able to beat those prices if you're going to sell to the local government. So health is an interesting and challenging area.
Thank you so much, Kimberly, and thank you, Carl. Thank you, Sierra. This has been a very a conversation rich with content and information. If I could wrap us up by saying one statement, I think Carl alluded to it best. International trade is a team sport, I guess. And if we can reflect on the Brazilian Olympics, we are Team Maryland, and that means we are going to go for the gold. Awesome. Thank you guys for tuning in online. This concludes our first panel. Thank you.
My name is Saskia Foley. I am the CEO and president of Radius Corporation. We make toothbrushes, travel cases, flosses, and accessories. Being in Kutztown, we had done a smattering of export, but it hadn't been a real focus for the company. And so part of my sales drive was to really see where we could go with the international part. A friend of mine recommended we work with the U.S. Commercial Service, and that's how I started. And overall, export is about 14% of our business now, and it's been growing heavily, which is really fantastic. We just hired a new international sales manager to really actually actively go out and seek those territories and work with the U.S. Commercial Service to find partners, which they're awesome at. No one should be scared of smaller companies being able to export. You just have to find the right niche, you have to find the right customer, and you have to find the right distributor, and then build that brand with that proper market entry. Companies that are out there looking for your type of unique product, and they're the ones also very interested in bringing new brands specifically made in USA. And I think export is one of the best things you can do. It's really cool to see that there's this whole other market out there. You can sell to the world, and you don't have to worry so much about just the USA market now. There's tons of people out there who want your products. All it takes is just figuring out how to get there.
MECCO is a 40-person company located in the Pittsburgh area. We're working with the world's leading manufacturers by implementing full marking and traceability systems. Our customers are looking for us to provide service and support beyond just North America. We know we can compete internationally. We just need to have the right partners in place. So we had worked with Catalyst Connection on exporting.
We're a private, not-for-profit consulting group that works exclusively with manufacturers to help them improve and grow their business. Dave and I started working together about a year ago on how to significantly grow their business, and international markets was one way that we knew of. So, I put them in touch with the U.S. Commercial Service, which has been invaluable.
We've primarily been doing the Gold Key service. It's a process that we realize would have taken us years to shorten it down within a few months. It's amazing.
The culture of the organization to the degree of innovation that they have built into the company, it is thriving, and I'm sure they have a very bright future on the horizon.
I'm Jim Bird, and I'm the CEO and President of Preservation Technologies. Our company is focused on preservation of paper-based material, books and documents. The problem with paper is that a lot of paper was made with a process that left residual acid in the paper. This is really a worldwide problem. If you neutralize the acid in the paper, then the paper will last for hundreds of years. So that's what we do here. We have our own plants in the Netherlands and in Japan. but we also have sold technology to customer sites. So we actually have 8 operating locations right now around the world. We sell equipment, and then we have an ongoing sale of chemistry that's moving. It's all produced in the U.S. and sold overseas. And so that's been a terrific source of new revenue for us to help fund our additional efforts here. In terms of locating in these countries or finding partners, it's very important that we have some understanding of what's going on in those countries. There we rely pretty heavily on the Commerce Department and the Commercial Service. Well, it's almost always our first call, in fact. They help us locate funding sources in terms of banks, attorneys. They give us advice on export controls. It's always a question of, can we work in this region safely? Is there anything we should try to avoid when we move into a region? This plant is the largest in the world doing what it does, and it's a fairly small footprint operating out of a relatively small facility north of Pittsburgh. So if a company was interested in exporting, it wouldn't be dissuaded by their size, and I wouldn't be dissuaded by what might seem like a difficult thing to go overseas. It's really fairly easy to do it.
My name is Saskia Foley. I am the CEO and president of Radius Corporation. We make toothbrushes, travel cases, flosses, and accessories. Being in Kutztown, we had done a smattering of export, but it hadn't been a real focus for the company. And so part of my sales drive was to really see where we could go with the international part. A friend of mine recommended we work with the U.S. Commercial Service, and that's how I started. And overall, I mean, export is about 14% of our business now, and it's been growing heavily, which is really fantastic. We just hired a new international sales manager to really actually actively go out and seek those territories and work with the U.S. Commercial Service to find partners, which they're awesome at. No one should be scared of smaller companies being able to export. You just have to find the right niche, you have to find the right customer, and you have to find the right distributor, and then build that brand with that proper market entry. Companies that are out there looking for your type of unique product, and they're the ones also very interested in bringing new brands specifically made in USA. And I think export's one of the best things you can do. You know, it's really cool to see that there's this whole other market out there. You can sell to the world, and you don't have to worry so much about just the USA market now. I mean, there's tons of people out there who want your products. All it takes is just figuring out how to get there.
MECCO is a 40-person company located in the Pittsburgh area. We're working with the world's leading manufacturers by implementing full marking and traceability systems. Our customers are looking for us to provide service and support beyond just North America. We know we can compete internationally. We just need to have the right partners in place. So we had worked with Catalyst Connection on exporting.
We're a private not-for-profit consulting group that works exclusively with manufacturers to help them improve and grow their business. Dave and I started working together about a year ago on how to significantly grow their business, and international markets was one way that we knew of. So, one, I put them in touch with the U.S. Commercial Service, which has been invaluable.
We've primarily been doing the Gold Key service. It's a process that we realize would have taken us years to shorten it down within a few months. It's amazing.
The culture of the organization to the degree of innovation that they have built into the company, it is thriving, and I'm sure they have a very bright future on the horizon.
I'm Jim Bird, and I'm the CEO and president of Preservation Technologies. Our company is focused on preservation of paper-based material, books and documents. The problem with paper is that a lot of paper was made with a process that left residual acid in the paper. This is really a worldwide problem. If you neutralize the acid in the paper, then the paper will last for hundreds of years. So that's what we do here. We have our own plants in the Netherlands and in Japan, but we also have sold technology to customer sites. So we actually have 8 operating locations right now around the world. We sell equipment, And then we have an ongoing sale of chemistry that's moving, it's all produced in the U.S. and sold overseas. And so that's been a terrific source of new revenue for us to help fund our additional efforts here. In terms of locating in these countries or finding partners, it's very important that we have some understanding of what's going on in those countries. There we rely pretty heavily on the Commerce Department and the Commercial Service. Well, it's almost always our first call, in fact. They help us locate funding sources in terms of banks, attorneys. They give us advice on export controls. It's always a question of, can we work in this region safely? Is there anything we should try to avoid when we move into a region? This plant is the largest in the world doing what it does, and it's a fairly small footprint operating out of a relatively small facility north of Pittsburgh. So if a company was interested in exporting, it wouldn't be dissuaded by their size, and I wouldn't be dissuaded by what might seem like a difficult thing to go overseas. It's really fairly easy to do it.
My name is Saskia Foley. I am the CEO and president of Radius Corporation. We make toothbrushes, travel cases, flosses, and accessories. Being in Kutztown, we had done a smattering of export, but it hadn't been a real focus for the company. And so part of my sales drive was to really see where we could go with the international part. A friend of mine recommended we work with the U.S. Commercial Service, and that's how I started. And overall, I mean, export is about 14% of our business now, and it's been growing heavily, which is really fantastic. We just hired a new international sales manager to really actually actively go out and seek those territories and work with the U.S. Commercial Service to find partners, which they're awesome at. No one should be scared of smaller companies being able to export. You just have to find the right niche, you have to find the right customer, and you have to find the right distributor, and then build that brand with that proper market entry. The companies that are out there looking for your type of unique product, and they're the ones also very interested in bringing new brands specifically made in USA. And I think export is one of the best things you can do. You know, it's really cool to see that there's this whole other market out there. You can sell to the world, and you don't have to worry so much about just the USA market now. I mean, there's tons of people out there who want your products. All it takes is just figuring out how to get there.
MECCO is a 40-person company located in the Pittsburgh area. We're working with the world's leading manufacturers by implementing full marking and traceability systems. Our customers are looking for us to provide service and support beyond just North America. We know we can compete internationally. We just need to have the right partners in place. So we had worked with Catalyst Connection on exporting.
We're a private not-for-profit consulting group that works exclusively with manufacturers to help them improve and grow their business. Dave and I started working together about a year ago on how to significantly grow their business, and international markets was one way that we knew of. So one, I put them in touch with the U.S. Commercial Service, which has been invaluable.
We've primarily been doing the Gold Key service. It's a process that we realize would have taken us years to shorten it down within a few months. It's amazing.
The culture of the organization to the degree of innovation that they have built into the company, it is thriving, and I'm sure they have a very bright future on the horizon.
I'm Jim Bird, and I'm the CEO and president of Preservation Technologies. Our company is focused on preservation of paper-based material, books and documents. The problem with paper is that a lot of paper was made with a process that left residual acid in the paper. This is really a worldwide problem. If you neutralize the acid in the paper, then the paper will last for hundreds of years. So that's what we do here. We have our own plants in the Netherlands and in Japan, but we also have sold technology to customer sites. So we actually have 8 operating locations right now around the world. We sell equipment, And then we have an ongoing sale of chemistry that's moving, it's all produced in the U.S. and sold overseas. And so that's been a terrific source of new revenue for us to help fund our additional efforts here. In terms of locating in these countries or finding partners, it's very important that we have some understanding of what's going on in those countries. There we rely pretty heavily on the Commerce Department and the Commercial Service. Well, it's almost always our first call, in fact. They help us locate funding sources in terms of banks, attorneys. They give us advice on export controls. It's always a question of, can we work in this region safely? Is there anything we should try to avoid when we move into a region? This plant is the largest in the world doing what it does, and it's a fairly small footprint operating out of a relatively small facility north of Pittsburgh. So if a company was interested in exporting, it wouldn't be dissuaded by their size, and I wouldn't be dissuaded by what might seem like a difficult thing to go overseas. It's really fairly easy to do it.
My name is Saskia Foley. I am the CEO and president of Radius Corporation. We make toothbrushes, travel cases, flosses, and accessories. Being in Kutztown, we had done a smattering of export, but it hadn't been a real focus for the company. And so part of my sales drive was to really see where we could go with the international part. A friend of mine recommended we work with the U.S. Commercial Service, and that's how I started. And overall, I mean, export is about 14% of our business now, and it's been growing heavily, which is really fantastic. We just hired a new international sales manager to really actually actively go out and seek those territories and work with the U.S. Commercial Service to find partners, which they're awesome at. No one should be scared of smaller companies being able to export. You just have to find the right niche, you have to find the right customer, and you have to find the right distributor, and then build that brand with that proper market entry. The companies that are out there looking for your type of unique product, and they're the ones also very interested in bringing new brands specifically made in USA. And I think export's one of the best things you can do. You know, it's really cool to see that there's this whole other market out there. You can sell to the world, and you don't have to worry so much about just the USA market now. I mean, there's tons of people out there who want your products. All it takes is just figuring out how to get there.
Hello and welcome to the 2016 International Trade Forum, brought to you by the Maryland, D.C. Export Council. My name is Kelly Leonard, and I will be moderating this particular panel on trade finance. During this segment, we'll examine the financial resources needed to successfully do business overseas and how companies manage the financial risks associated with exporting. I'd like to begin the panel with some brief introductions. As Ellicott Dredge Enterprises International Trade Finance Manager, Marie Torres is responsible for delivering creative financial solutions to both domestic and overseas customers. For international credits, she routinely utilizes the short and medium-term programs of the Export-Import Bank and private credit insurance to support Ellicott's export needs in emerging markets. Additionally, she works with Ellicott's corporate CFO for the arrangement and negotiation of master credit lines for both U.S. and European countries. Elizabeth Thomas is a business development specialist at the Export-Import Bank of the United States. Throughout her career, Elizabeth worked in the U.S., in Europe, and Asia as an international business executive. Prior to joining EXIM Bank, she held several sales, marketing, and health policy leadership positions. She worked with Hewlett-Packard, InTouch Health, and other high-tech companies in the areas of wearable smart fabrics, robotic telemedicine, and medication life cycle tracking for hospitals. Jean Sutter is with BB&T's International Services Division. With over 30 years of international business experience centered in trade finance and foreign exchange, Jean provides clients and banking colleagues with practical solutions for doing business outside of the U.S. Having worked with a diverse range of clients from large corporate to startup, Jean's experiences assist in the development of focused game plans for the implementation of international business activities. And finally, Bill Hauk has 30 years of international trade, trade credit insurance, and international corporate risk management experience. He's held management positions with the EXIM Bank and private sector concerns private sector concerns specializing in asset-based lending, corporate credit risk management, and global capital market originations. Bill is currently SBA's Office of International Trade Regional Manager for the Mid-Atlantic region. Welcome to our panelists. And I want to start this panel by posing a question to Marie, and really to get a better sense of your experience with trade finance and which resources you've used.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Trade and exporting, as we all know, is very challenging. For a company like Ellicott, we have to compete with very large companies overseas with much more greater resources than we have. But we have survived the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs of business by being diversified. Companies have to be ready to expand and not just rely on the U.S. market. So by doing so, we face greater challenges. But trade finance products have allowed Ellicott to expand overseas and take riskier markets, extend more terms of payment to our customers that have enabled us to complete sales that otherwise we would not have been able to. For example, in the early 2000s, our company had very, very large challenges that if we did not overcome, probably we won't be around today. But thank you to the assistance of our local banking partner back then, Branch Banking and Trust, whom I did not know was going to be in this panel today. So I'm going to be a walking advertisement for BB&T.
Thank you.
As well as EXIM Bank. Like I said, in the early 2000s, we had some major challenges that led our company to restructure. And you know, when a company is restructuring, it's very hard to find financing. In practical life, when you don't need financing, banks are offering you financing. But when you really, really need the financing, it's very hard to get it. But thank you to BB&T and to EXIM Bank. BB&T provided us a working capital facility that allowed us to use our company assets, inventory and receivables, as collateral to the bank. But because of the credit profile, as well as the markets that we cover overseas, BB&T needed a credit enhancement. And that was in the form of an EXIM Bank working capital guarantee. We started with about $1.5 million in credit facility, and over the years, BB&T was able to expand and grow our credit lines that allowed our company to produce more product for the foreign markets. One of the key things in being able to compete is having stock ready for immediate delivery, so that when customers order our dredges, we could turn around and ship in a very, very fast turnaround possible. That has also enabled us to be more competitive. At the same time, overseas customers also require terms of payment. And because banks generally don't lend against foreign receivables, we had to get EXIM short-term credit insurance to support some of our transactions which are not secured. For example, open account terms. If you have receivables that are not backed by letters of credit, usually banks won't lend against those receivables. But with EXIM's short-term insurance products, we were able to, first of all, approve credit extensions to our foreign customers without requiring letters of credit. But letters of credit, of course, is very key in ensuring payments from those foreign buyers, because it's a good thing to sell, but most importantly, we have to make sure as a business that we would get paid after we ship, either immediately after shipment or if we approve deferred payment terms under the program that we're in with BB&T and EXIM Bank, we could extend up to 360 days open account terms to our approved customers. They have to pass through certain credit criteria, meet those criteria. It's not a freebie, but these are very good tools. So these are some of the trade finance resources that we used in the past and still using to the very present time. We have also been utilizing private credit insurance in instances where we wanted to extend more than 360 days and not use EXIM's medium-term program. And because of the assistance we got from our bank and EXIM Bank, we were able to grow and acquire other companies in the same line of business. So from about 2000 to 2010, 2012, our company experienced steady growth over that period of time. We have acquired at least 3 companies in the U.S., former competitors. We also acquired 1 company in Germany, so we have full manufacturing capabilities in Germany, German-made dredges, and then also in the Netherlands.
So Marie, you mentioned a lot of different resources
Yes.
that you used through the restructuring and just through your business in general. One piece that you touched on was the whole private credit insurance piece. And so Elizabeth, my question for you would be actually kind of a 2-part thing. How easy is the application process for credit insurance, and then how long does it take to get a policy typically?
So thank you, Kelly. Before I answer those questions, let me put what EXIM Bank does in context so we understand where the questions are coming from. EXIM Bank is a federal government agency. We were started in 1934. And the reason we exist, our mission, is to support U.S. jobs by facilitating the export of U.S. goods and services. And if there's one concept that I'd like you to take away from our discussion today, it's this: small business is our business. So in the last fiscal year, 90% of the transactions that we did were to small businesses. And what I like to say is no company, no business is too small, and no deal is too small. And so what do we do that helps small businesses? We help small businesses primarily in 3 ways. 1, to help improve your cash flow. 2, to empower you to offer credit terms to foreign buyers. And then 3, to protect those foreign receivables from non-payment by your international buyers. And the way that we do this is we have a couple of tools, and I'm just going to touch on 2 of them today. And let's use an example. Let's say you get you have a customer overseas contacts your company, and they want to place an order for $30,000 of your goods or services. And this is a nice order for your company. You're very interested in this. But you're concerned because you don't know this customer, you've never done business in this country, but on the other hand, it could be a new market for you. So there's some very good and compelling reasons for you to do this. One of the tools that we have is called export credit insurance, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's an insurance policy. And what it does is it insures your foreign receivables. So one example would be, an example of one of our policies would cover that $30,000 invoice up to 95% at a cost of 65 cents per $100 value of the invoice. So you take the $30,000 deal, you have export credit insurance, and you give 60-day credit terms. So your foreign buyer is requiring credit terms. So now you extend 60-day credit terms, you take the deal, the $30,000 invoice is covered by your insurance up to $28,500 at a cost of $195. So it's a pretty good deal. So now we're all excited because we have this customer, we can sleep at night because we know that the deal is covered, but we got to go back to the office and we either have to build the product or we have to create the service to fulfill this international order, and we need cash to do that. So as Marie was saying with Ellicott Drudges, what we do is we work with you and your commercial lender, so it could be BB&T or any other bank. And the bank actually makes the loan to your company, and then we guarantee repayment of that loan directly to the bank. And that's a working capital loan guarantee. So now we've got the trifecta, right? We've got the order, we're sleeping at night because we've got the insurance, and we've got the cash to go fulfill that international order. That, in a nutshell, is really how we work with small businesses. There are a few restrictions to working with us. We don't support sales to foreign militaries. The content of what you're providing needs to be at least 50% US content, and that can include overhead. It does not include markup, but it can include overhead. And you need to be working with a company that's in a country where the bank is open. So there are about 196 countries in the world, and we're currently open in 189 of them, and we have ways and links on the website to let you know where we're open for business. So back to the question, which was, how easy is it and how long does it take? For the example I cited, it's a 3-page application that's very simple. We have 12 offices throughout the United States where our field regional directors sit, and they sit down with you and they go through this 3-page application, which is very simple, and then you enter it online, and from the time that it's entered online until a decision is made is about 10 working days.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Awesome. That's great turnaround. Yeah. And then as a customer, as a user of that, how did you find the process to work for you?
Very efficient, because it was our bank then, BB&T, that handled the application process. And the other advantage was BB&T had delegated authority from EXIM Bank, that BB&T was able to commit EXIM Bank on a very fast turnaround time without getting EXIM Bank to approve the application for our working capital guarantee. Ultimately, over time, we grew and we were profitable. We were profitable each year, that at some point, BB&T was able to release us from the guarantee. So.
Beautiful. So it
Yes.
sounds like a textbook example, right?
Exactly. And I'm glad BB&T is the banker in this panel today.
Awesome. And so Jean, let's hear from you. What are some of the different options and risks associated with getting paid in this foreign market?
Very good. Well, thank you. And first, I've got to thank both my colleagues up here for the good marketing and advertising with BB&T. And yes, just to set the groundwork, BB&T does do business in 120 countries throughout the world, primarily through dealing with our correspondent banking network, so that as we're dealing with you or your clients, we know we've got some good banks in countries to deal with. How do we mitigate the risk? Let me give an example, and Elizabeth mentioned it earlier on. You go to a networking event, you meet up with someone who says, boy, I like your flyers, and I'd like to buy $50,000 worth of them. Your typical sale is $2,000, $5,000, so my goodness, what an opportunity we've got here, $50,000. Oh, but the company is in France. And Jean, if you'll send us the product, we'll pay it once we get it in at our airport or in our place. And just send it on. Don't worry about it. We got a great website. Here's my business card. Go check it all out. Okay, well, I'm still excited about that transaction, but why don't you pay me first, and then I'll create these flyers and send them on to you, and that's going to work out better for my company. So you've got two people involved in the transaction. Both of them want to proceed. How can I control this? Both sides of the transaction. Well, one of the products, not only insurance, but one of the products we really talk about are letters of credit. What is a letter of credit? A letter of credit is something that involves two banks, and I talked about the correspondent banks that we deal with in the 120 countries, become involved in your transaction, and from the seller's standpoint, give you a much higher level of comfort, because for your buyer's bank to issue a letter of credit to your benefit, they've done a credit underwriting of that client in country. So you have now got that higher comfort level that, all right, if I fulfill the requirements of this letter of credit, XYZ Bank is ensuring that payment is going to come through to me. It also can include giving terms, as Elizabeth had mentioned earlier, which is beneficial for your sales in that country. But again, it's an insurance type of relationship that you have with your buyer in the foreign country. How does it benefit them, and why would they want to give you that letter of credit? It's going to outline in the letter of credit what documents are needed for you as the buyer in France to pick up this product and to clear it through your local customs, your local regulatory requirements. You can also include in that letter of credit an inspection certificate, so that before it leaves the US, you've got some comfort level that it's been reviewed and cleared. Often when we're talking to clients, prospects, consultants, there's a concern, oh, it's an additional cost and it's an additional administrative burden on me. Well, the costs are pretty minimal, typically 0.3% on the face value of the transaction. So once again, a good assurance on both parties' sides that if we fulfill all the elements of this document, we're going to get paid. It's a great way to start a relationship. Maybe you'll use a letter of credit for the first 3 or 4 transactions. You can then move to something called documentary collections, which still requires 2 banks to be involved, but it does not have the limitations or the restrictions of a letter of credit, and is fairly smoother. Having said that, it also does not give the assurances that a letter of credit would have.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And so, Bill, from your perspective of SBA, what does SBA do? How do they help small businesses gain access to working capital so that they can participate in exporting?
First, it's really listening to the company, understanding what their needs are. Between the three of us, and I would challenge you to present a situation where between the three of us, there really isn't any export transaction that we can't assist with. We can't. So it's really understanding what their needs are. Is it pre-export working capital? With SBA, we have programs that can help you finance that first dollar of export activity. So first, I need to understand where the company is in the evolution of their export business. You know, they've shipped to Mexico, they've shipped to Canada, and they've seen, I think as Carl had mentioned, the profitability is pretty good. The margins were 10% better than they were on domestic sale. So they want to pursue other markets. Later, you're going to hear from U.S. Commercial Service and I believe the state of Maryland. And they might start a dialogue with one of those folks to start looking at new opportunities. So for that company, they may need working capital to change their website. They may need working capital to change their plans into different languages or into metric. So there may be a piece of working capital that's going to use just for export development activity, traveling overseas, trade shows, what have you. So I work with them and their lender to identify one of our programs that supports the financing of export development activities. What I tell these companies that really they need to understand the working capital needs well before they make that first trip overseas. They need to understand that as Gene mentioned, you may do a $10,000 transaction here in the United States, but economies of scale, you might be in Colombia and you've got to fill a whole container, which is $50,000. All of a sudden, you're sitting at the negotiating tables at $50,000. Well, gosh, what do I do now? Well, you should understand your working capital capabilities well before you go. And you should also understand the tools of EXIM Bank in the private sector. With EXIM Bank, you should also understand how to use export credit insurance, again, before you start negotiating, before you start that first conversation, because you want to be able to pull credit terms out of your pocket if it comes to that, if you've got competition. So that's listening to the company and understanding what their needs are. That's how I work with them and their lender to put them in the right program, because we provide a 90% guarantee to the lender. Small business is risky to lend to for first part. Second part, you add the export element to it, it becomes even riskier. So we provide a 90% guarantee to the lender. And then if they're mature, so they're Alcott dredges and they're 3 years and they're now needing a revolving line of credit of $3 million for transactions and inventory, bid bonding, advanced payment guarantees, then I coach them how to use that program, and that's our export working capital guarantee. And then I'm assuming that at some point in time, they purchased 3 companies. We have a program, our international trade loan program, where you can actually purchase a company that's exporting and finance it under our international trade loan program and get 25-year financing for that.
Yes.
Or equipment or permanent working capital. So it's understanding what the needs are and plugging them into the right programs with their bank.
Yeah, to add to what was just mentioned, our company purchased an operation in Wisconsin in 1998. SBA helped Ellicott with a guarantee under its 7A program, where we were able to expand manufacturing capacity for the company through the equipment financing facility of SBA. It's a successful story because SBA the loan got paid off. It was provided by a local bank in Wisconsin with a SBA guarantee and paid off on time.
So as you can see, there really isn't anything that we can't address. So I challenge you to come up with some type of weird scenario, and I'll bet you we can solve it.
So now, Bill, with the work that SBA does and the loan guarantee and all that great stuff, if I'm a small business owner, can I still work through my current bank, my current financial institution in order to leverage SBA, or how does that work?
Well, I try and work with as many banks as possible. So if they are working with ABC Bank that's got 10 branches, that bank is not too small. You can work with BB&T. I think we have another bank here. I think we have Fulton Bank that have international departments. So they could work with them as far as issuing a letter of credit or a standby letter of credit. But a bank is not too small. So yes, that is my goal, is to work with community banks and also credit unions. So there is no bank that's not too small. So if they're working with a bank, I don't immediately take them to, I don't immediately take them to an international bank. I want to get that bank who is already probably an SBA lender. There's 4,200 SBA lenders, so that covers a lot of banks in the United States. So I coach them on how to use our export programs, so yes.
Okay, awesome. And now, what happens in the unlikely instance where maybe a foreign buyer doesn't pay on time or doesn't pay at all? How does that impact me as the small business owner? Like, how do I navigate those challenges and risks? Would you like to take that as an action?
I'll give it a shot, Kelly.
You're going to admit that you had losses? No.
Thankfully, almost none in the last 16 years.
Wow.
Yes. What we have done is to try to reduce our foreign credit risk exposure as much as we can. We realize that the trade credit insurance programs only provide up to 90% most of the time. So there is that exposure. We try to cover that with margins, and at the same time being very diligent with collections. If we don't mitigate our risk with credit enhancements such as EXIM's short-term and medium-term insurance products, or the private market, or by having the LCs confirmed by a U.S. bank like BB&T. A company like Ellicott would be so exposed, like being out there in the lion's den, should the buyer fail to pay for whatever reasons, whether it's country risk or if the buyer goes insolvent or just refuses to pay. But with credit enhancement, we were able to ensure ourselves that at the end of the day, when it's time to collect, that we get our funds. It's very rare that we have to absorb the uncovered credit risk as far as we're concerned. If we didn't accomplish that, I wouldn't be here today. I would have been told to leave the company. It's my role to make sure that we get paid at the end of the day.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and let me add to that from the banking perspective. If you're a company and fortunate enough to self-fund, that's great, and would be sad that you would have the loss, but you could probably move on and survive. On the banking side, and this happens unfortunately too many times than it should, you've had that transaction, again, it was great, you decided to ship your goods, and now they're sitting in port, and the person says, well, wait a minute, I'm going to either pay you 50 cents on the dollar or come and get them. And I heard one of our previous speakers talking about trying to litigate in a foreign country, real issues. Or they just string you out and you're 30, 60, 90 days out. Well, while your banker is there trying to help you, a couple of issues are going to come up. You were able to finance the shipment, but now you're doing your regular business. One of your receivables is 90 days past due. Not only is it a foreign receivable, hey, why didn't you tell me you were doing a foreign transaction? But what's the likelihood of you now getting paid on this in fact? And as the credit review's coming up, as some of the requirements for your loan might get triggered because your cash flow has been dramatically impacted, if you don't have insurance, if you don't have some type of support, if you don't have a letter of credit which would have gotten you paid either upon shipment or 90 days later that you can show to your banker, you're going to have some type of issue. And again, your banker may not be able to renew your line of credit or even move forward with the current line of credit that is in place. So very important to talk to all of the consultants that you have on both the financing side, but more importantly, your banking side. So,
well,
great question.
One advantage of having credit insurance is that after a certain waiting period, you can claim on the insurance, and the insurer, such as EXIM, will pay you either 90 or 95% of your invoice value as long as you comply with the terms of the credit insurance policy. Then you assign your receivable to EXIM Bank, who takes over the collection of the receivable, whether EXIM Bank or the insurance company, private insurance, whoever issued the policy, takes over the collection. So that relieves the U.S. exporter from going after the foreign buyer in his country and litigating or trying to recover the asset. It's very, very difficult. It's an expensive process. So I strongly
Thank you.
urge and advocate.
So just to reiterate, what Maria's saying is that if you have a loss in a foreign country and you're not covered, you have very little recourse, right? You're, as Gina's saying, you're going to go over, you're going to try to sue. You basically have very little recourse. But I'd like to put in a plug for the Department of Commerce U.S. Commercial Service, of which we are not a part. We're a very separate agency. I think I heard on the earlier panel, one of the panelists mentioning the Gold Key service, which if you're not exporting yet and you're thinking about it, It's a tremendous service where they have people in country who actually vet potential partners and companies for you. So their people actually go out, they go to the company's offices, they make sure they're real, they understand their financial situation, and so it helps you mitigate your risk right up front by having, choosing partners from a pool that have already been vetted. That being said, even when you choose the best partner possible, we have a client who had a long-term standing relationship with an excellent customer for years, never had a payment problem, and then one day their client didn't pay. And it happens. All kinds of things happen. And in that case, as Marie said, it's just like an insurance policy. You file a claim and you get covered for the claim.
So Bill, from your perspective, how does this all come together, like in terms of non-payment, delayed payment? How does SBA get involved?
Primarily through structuring, meaning that going back and understanding the needs of the company. I like to understand what their experience has been, what their accounts receivable aging looks like, and then guiding them as to how they can improve that. The nice thing about insurance, either private sector through EXIM Bank, is it kind of forces you to sophisticate your credit shop. You may have started at letter of credit or cash in advance, but if you're going to remain competitive, you're going to have to offer terms at some point in time. So I'll look and I'll tell them you're probably missing out on a lot of opportunities here by not extending terms. So I will coach them on the use of credit insurance and what their obligations are, meaning that under one of the programs, they've got to get trade references, they've got to get financial statements, they have to have a credit policy in place so they can show the credit insurer, EXIM Bank, that they are sophisticated enough to manage a policy, and to see what their balance sheet looks like. Can they absorb a loss? If they are doing cash in advance and letter of credit, as I said, they're probably missing out on opportunities. I mean, if you're not losing some money every once in a while, you're not taking enough risk.
Correct.
I mean, 25 basis points, 50 maybe 1%. If you're losing that, that's okay. But you're not taking enough risk. So it's showing them that they can take risk without worrying about not getting paid. Showing them how they need to operate on a credit basis, and how it impacts their relationship with their banks if they need to finance those receivables.
I'd like to add to that. Although guarantees and insurance policies sound really great, the insured also has tremendous obligations to ensure that the policy remains enforceable when it's time to call on the policy. As a business, it is very important you document your transaction perfectly. You have to maintain your shipping documents, the bills of lading, your invoices, your certificate of origin, and also prove that the product left the U.S. and entered the country. In some countries like Mexico, we don't ship by ocean, so you don't have an ocean bill of lading. But there's an instrument called pedimento, which you have to secure from the customer. And if you don't have a pedimento in a Mexican, say a sale to Mexico, and you claim on your policy, your claim will be denied. So it's very important to document each export transaction and keep those documents secured in a place in your company where it's very reachable and could be compiled as a package when you present a claim. Hopefully you don't have to claim, but you do. If you do, you have to document properly.
We're talking about products, the DC metro area, a lot of IT service providers. So for you IT folks, services are a big export. Yes. So that's again understanding the company, making sure they're documenting their services well, properly, so that the bank is comfortable with those types of invoices, those types of contracts. So for the folks that are in the audience that are in the service industry, those are perfectly exportable receivables. So.
So we're going to begin opening up the floor for questions. So if you do have a question, please proceed to the back of the room, and we'll get ready to take those questions. And I'm going to tweet your quote, Bill. If you're not losing money, you're not taking money.
That's right. That's right.
That's great.
I've been doing this a long time.
true.
If you're not losing money, you're not taking enough risk.
Awesome. So along those lines, as a small business owner, I mean, these are all great products, but I'm assuming as the borrower, there must be some sort of guarantee, a personal guarantee or other guarantees that are expected of the borrower to secure these types of financing. So can you describe for me what types of guarantees are required of or expected of borrowers?
SBA, EXIM Bank in certain situations, they are a little flexible in the personal guarantees, depending on the balance sheet that they're looking at. SBA, we never waive the personal guarantee. So anybody that owns 20% or more of the company needs to personally guarantee the loan. What that means is a signature. You're not pledging personal assets. The only assets that you're pledging are the assets that we're financing. Receivables, inventory, contracts. So no personal assets are involved unless it's a situation where there's such a lack of collateral that the bank's going to require some personal. But SBA does not require personal individual collateral as part of the guarantee. It's just a signature that if everything goes south, we pay the bank off, and then we go to the guarantor saying, now we have to work something else to pay back the federal government.
Having said that, I'll comment that your banker may likely go a little bit further on that. How many times will someone come and say, well, I've talked to EXIM and they will guarantee, I've talked to SBA and they will guarantee, so I need the money by week's end. Well, we still are required to do a credit underwriting on you, and while we love using these as support for our transactions, we're still going to look for a couple of things, including if we're willing to take the risk, and if our supporting entities are willing to take a risk, boy, we'd sure like you to take the risk as well with us. So your personal guarantee, your personal signature is very important. Absolutely. And that's very important for you as business people and consultants to know. Just because it comes with strong support, we still want your skin in the game.
Elizabeth, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I think that's covered everything. Yeah.
Marie, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I think they touched on everything.
Okay, let's take our first question then.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Eric Henderson. I'm with XCBG International Development Group. I'm going to ask all of you to pronounce that after the seminar. It stands for Ex-Commerce Bank Group. I'm a former Commerce Department and World Bank so thank you for my colleagues for their service to this country. They're going many challenging places. But my question is somewhat of a technical question. I have admittedly failed on more than 70 EXIM deals, but I've closed about 30. My question is two-part. The first is it possible, typically in buyer financing, you have to get a 15% down payment from the buyer. Is it possible to get 10 or 8? That's the first question. And the second question, and this is directed more toward Bill, if you're going to hire services, lawyers, accountants, architects, engineers in a foreign country, how does SBA help with that? So I have one for the both of you.
On the percentage-wise, certainly the bank is going to do its particular underwriting, and depending on the company itself and how strong it may be or not, we would determine what percentage we would want. We've got the guarantee of SBA or EXIM, so again, depending on the strength of the entity itself would depend on how much cash in advance or down payment you would have, but
yeah, I would just say that each situation is very different and each one is very individual, and we need to get into the complexities and the details of each particular situation.
Yeah, for the most part, if you're talking about medium term, a 15% down payment is going to be required. There may be ways to finance that down payment, so it really depends on the structure. But in most cases, they're going to require a 15% down payment.
From the perspective of an exporter, when we deal with EXIM's medium-term program, the 15% down payment is a requirement. It can come from the buyer, or it could come from us. We could self-finance the 15% if we deem that the buyer is creditworthy. So somehow somebody has got to put up the 15%, whether it's the buyer or the exporter or the bank. And that's EXIM's requirement for medium-term financing.
And then on the financing of export development services, in local counsel, architects, what have you. Our Export Express program, that's the program where you can finance any export-related activity. Yes. Absolutely anything. As long as it's identified and you use a proceeds statement of a business plan that the bank keeps on file, then you can finance literally any export-related activity.
And I think EXIM's medium-term program can cover a certain percentage of the local cost. You just have to consult with your loan officer in the structured financing department.
May I ask another one?
Yes, sir.
Quickly, sure.
Quickly. To our friends at Ellicott Dredges, the person that trained me was Walter Mather at HSBC.
Yes.
So have you in the past ever gotten a waiver against a local bank guarantee since you do so much exporting to Africa?
What do you mean local bank guarantee?
What?
Local bank support.
Correct.
Yes. I work with Walter very actively. Walter Mather, that our colleague here mentioned, covers West Africa for Ellicott. In Nigeria, for example, we have close to 100 Ellicott dredges on ground. They were primarily funded through letters of credit from local banks, which I get confirmation from U.S. banks like BB&T and others, or some Western European banks. There are instances where we can waive local guarantee, provided that the local buyer is creditworthy from the perspective of, after reviewing financial statements of the buyer. We have extended open account terms with EXIM short-term insurance.
Super. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Gabe Omar with the Maryland Small Business Center, and I have a question for EXIM Bank, SBA, and BB&T. So my question is, it looks like you guys talking about companies that are ready, in an up and running, status. So what about startup companies? What are the ABCs of getting a business loan? And my second part of the question is, do you find that financing companies to certain countries much easier than certain part of the world? Let's say Canada or Mexico will be much easier than South Africa. Those are my questions. Thank you.
As far as startup, our minimum requirement is a company be in business for at least a year.
Okay.
The likelihood that they're going to have a balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow statement to support a line of credit after just 1 year of operation it's unlikely. So both SBA and just from a basic credit standpoint, a lender is going to want to see a favorable, consistent operating history. Maybe break-even cash flow, but they want to see some profitability and some retained earnings on their some capital retained. I have looked at, and I did approve 2 years ago, a company that was 8 months in operation, but the two principals had both put in $500,000 each, and they had $2 million worth of firm orders. So, and they were based on letters of credit. So in that situation, management had experience, they had sufficient capital, and they had very firm orders based on secured terms, letters of credit. We gave them $2 million line. So that's an exception. Mm-hmm. But we require at least a year in business.
Okay.
And from the banking perspective, we would look at a startup, but that is where the personal guarantee, the personal assets, can you leverage your personal real estate to get it going? But as Bill said, any financial institution will really be looking for some type of history, a year, a couple of years worth. But the startups, because certainly in this market, We have so many people, because of the international aspect, that have relationships in countries, see opportunities. We like to try and work with them, but it is a much more difficult process and requires a lot more personal investment.
So for us at EXIM Bank, most of the companies have been in business for 3 years. There are some exceptions to that. If you have someone who's coming from an industry they've been in for 25 years, there may be an exception. Companies have to have a DUNS number from D&B and some either financial information or a tax return.
And do you guys find easier to deal with some countries than others?
So we have what's called a country limitation schedule. It's on our website. And currently we're open in 189 countries around the world. So there's only a handful where we're not doing business.
Yeah, similarly, we'll rely on EXIM where they're doing business, look at the transaction specifically and see how we could deal with it. The insurance products that were talked about will probably be a big part of the transaction, but yeah, we're open. And that's why it's good before people start to get involved in a transaction to talk to all of the assets that they have available, Department of Commerce and their financing element.
Yeah, some markets have a stronger rule of law as far as, now if you're in the service industry, I recommend companies, on their service contract, and I think the chemical company that was here, they talked about their 25-page distributor agreement or partnership agreement. That's great. You could use a rule of law. You could use Southern District of Manhattan as the jurisdiction, but you want to make sure you have proper leverage against your buyer on a service contract, but you want to make sure that that's tested in the local market. So if you're going to have a hard time, even with credit insurance, but if you're going to have a hard time perfecting that contract in country because you haven't tested that language in that contract, so some countries have better rule of law than others. Some countries have a wide selection of commercial banks that can help with either foreign exchange, letters of credit, documentary collection, and others have very limited, maybe one bank. So it really depends on the market, but there's certainly differences.
Thank you. Thanks.
So from the perspective of financial payments, so tell us, and I'll throw this out as a general question, tell us which factors relating to financial payment are different when selling internationally as compared to selling domestically. So just an open question. Would you like to take it, Marie?
I'll start. Okay. There's, of course, lesser challenges selling domestically in terms of, pursuing collection efforts. And most importantly, the asset remains in the U.S., such as what we sell. A dredge is a large piece of equipment. If a bank finances or we finance the financing or provide supplier financing to the buyer in the U.S., filing of security interest under UCC is affected. That results into a lien filing, meaning even if we've sold the asset, the dredge, to XYZ company in the U.S., we still have security interest filed legally in the U.S. so that in the event of a default, after we've pursued and exhausted collection efforts, we can locate where the product is in the U.S., where the equipment is in the U.S., and we can repossess. Take it back to our warehouse, our yard, refurbish, either lease or rent to another customer or resell either to another U.S. customer or a foreign buyer. Now, there's more challenges when selling overseas. First is the asset leaves the U.S. Once the asset leaves the U.S., it's a lot more difficult in the event you have to foreclose. Well, our company has reached a stage where we are able to self-finance our customers on a case-by-case basis. What we do is, what we've done and what I've structured is a program similar to how banks book loans. We have our own promissory note. We have other documents which the foreign buyer is made to execute, such as a security agreement, and we also require personal guarantees. We use local counsel in the U.S. who does all the documentation for us, files a UCC here in the States, because the documents are governed by U.S. law. In fact, state of Maryland law. But what we do as another step is we hire local counsel in country that will perfect our security interest in that foreign market. So it's a much more involved process. And we hold the paper. Those are reflected as either short-term or long-term receivables in our books. And hopefully we do not have to claim, because if we do, we have to enforce our rights legally over there. And we have to take the asset back from, say, Mexico, or let's say it's not Mexico, further out, because Mexico is connected here. Say Nigeria, we have to ship the equipment back from there to here, and that's a cost. Legal fees add up. So we try to add all those into the price. We charge legal and documentation fee for supplier financing transactions upfront, which we collect.
Okay.
So we're like a bank.
Any other thoughts?
Get a letter of credit. You've got that credit underwriting of the customer, and of course things can blow up in the term, but you've got a bank involved. You've got your local bank. You've got the bank that they've chosen to deal with. If it's confirmed, as Maria said, you've added a higher level of assurance to it. But until you've got a comfort level with a client, that is a cheap form of insurance. We insure everything else in our businesses, in our lives.
But we know that businesses have to compete, and times are very difficult now with the drop in oil prices, major currency devaluations in the emerging countries. It's very, very difficult to sell. So we've got to be creative as a business, as an exporting company. We got to really go out of our way, because we compete with very large companies overseas who literally would sell their product and say, just pay me back.
That's kind of a loss leader. We talk about letters of credit, those types of terms of sale. I mean, open account 30 days, letters of credit, cash against documents. But you also have to understand the costs associated, like, are you picking up the insurance? When do you pass title off to the buyer? So what's called Incoterms. Right. So you've got your net 30, you've got but you've got to understand what terms you're going to sell on, as far as who's going to pay for the shipping insurance on the sale of a product, of a good. When does title pass? Does it pass when it lands on the ship? Does it pass when it gets off the ship in country? You need to understand that really well, and that can be very industry specific. So that's part of the terms that you need to fully understand as well, because that affects the cost of the transaction.
So I'd just like to make a point that has really nothing to do with your question. But so I'm a former small business owner myself, and I know what it takes to run a small business. And you spend pretty much 24/7 trying to run your business. And if I were sitting in your seat, I might be thinking to myself, I'm hearing all these challenges about exporting. Why would I want to, is this going to be a distraction? Is this going to take away from my business? There's so many challenges. Why would I want to do this? So I just want to share 3 examples of clients that we work with, and this is all publicly available information on blogs and websites, and they've done webinars with us on why a small business might want to think about exporting. We work with a medical device manufacturer out of Florida. They increased their revenues 400% because of exporting. We work with a plastics manufacturer out of Indiana. It's a veteran-owned small business. They do 65% of their revenues now are from overseas exports. And then we work with a company in New Jersey. They're about to appear in our blog in a week or so. They do heavy construction equipment. And they managed to survive 2009, 2010, because they had enough money. Then 2011, they started laying off employees. And then 2012, when their export business really kicked in, it saved the company. And they were able to go back and rehire their employees. And they're really proud of the fact that they have a we're looking for a mechanic sign in their front lawn in front of their office building. They're really proud of that. And so it is challenging. I'm not going to say it's not, but you have so many resources that are at your disposal between the Department of Commerce, the U.S. Commercial Service, private industry, SBA, EXIM Bank. We all work very, very closely together to try to help you. We know what the pitfalls are and we know what the challenges are, and we can try to help you mitigate those challenges.
At the same time, too, companies have to diversify. In economic economy goes up and down, up and down. Sometimes U.S. economy is up, so companies are not too heavily reliant on exporting. But in our case, there was a time when the U.S. market was so depressed, and if we weren't exporting, we would not have survived. One year, our export business contributed over 90% of total consolidated sales.
Awesome. Let's take our final question.
Thank you. Brenda Harrington from Adaptive Leadership Strategies, and you've certainly made a compelling argument for considering exporting as part of your business. And a lot of what you've said and what has been said in the first panel coalesces around cultural differences and just understanding the host environment. So I'm curious about what types of risk tolerance or risk premiums you assess when there is a higher likelihood of something not coming together.
I would think, you're pricing to risk.
Pricing to risk.
I mean, most definitely. I mean, both on the international, on the credit side, overseas, you're pricing to risk. So if it's going to be cash in advance, you're going to have one price. If you're going to have net 60 days, you're going to have another price. But if you're going to Ghana or a developing market where there is a likelihood of an extended period of non-payment, then you're going to price your product to address the cost of funds. And a bank's going to price to risk as far as the risk of the small business.
EXIM Bank also, their premiums escalate depending on the country risk, their perception of the country risk. And as an exporter, we have to pass that on to the customer by adding the premiums and other expenses that we anticipate into the selling price.
And so just to clarify, so Marie is 100% correct for some of our products, and for some of our products it doesn't. So,
okay.
But if I can make another pitch for something, understanding cultural norms can make or break your business. Yes. As you know, you're going into a foreign country, it is so important to understand what are the social cultural norms, what are the business cultural norms, and again, there's a lot of resources that can help with that.
Yeah.
Awesome. And on that note, we are going to conclude this panel. Marie, Elizabeth, Jean, Bill, thank you so much for your insight and your expertise. We appreciate you. Thank you all for joining us on the live stream and here in the television studio. We look forward to our third panel.
My name is Saskia Foley. I am the CEO and president of Radius Corporation. We make toothbrushes, travel cases, flosses, and accessories. Being in Kutztown, we had done a smattering of export, but it hadn't been a real focus for the company. And so part of my sales drive was to really see where we could go with the international part. A friend of mine recommended we work with the U.S. Commercial Service, and that's how I started. And overall, export is about 14% of our business now, and it's been growing heavily, which is really fantastic. We just hired a new international sales manager to really actually actively go out and seek those territories and work with the U.S. Commercial Service to find partners, which they're awesome at. No one should be scared of smaller companies being able to export. You just have to find the right niche, you have to find the right customer, and you have to find the right distributor, and then build that brand with that proper market entry. The companies that are out there looking for your type of unique product, and they're the ones also very interested in bringing new brands specifically made in USA. I think export's one of the best things you can do. It's really cool to see that there's this whole other market out there. You can sell to the world, and you don't have to worry so much about just the USA market now. There's tons of people out there who want your products. All it takes is just figuring out how to get there.
Echo is a 40-person company located in the Pittsburgh area. We're working with the world's leading manufacturers by implementing full marking and traceability systems. Our customers are looking for us to provide service and support beyond just North America. We know we can compete internationally. We just need to have the right partners in place. So we had worked with Catalyst Connection on exporting.
We're a private not-for-profit consulting group that works exclusively with manufacturers to help them improve and grow their business. Dave and I started working together about a year ago on how to significantly grow their business, and international markets was one way that we knew of. So one, I put them in touch with the U.S. Commercial Service, which has been invaluable.
We've primarily been doing the Gold Key service. It's a process that we realized would have taken us years to shorten it down within a few months. It's amazing.
The culture of the organization to the degree of innovation that they have built into the company, it is thriving, and I'm sure they have a very bright future on the horizon.
I'm Jim Bird, and I'm the CEO and President of Preservation Technologies. Our company is focused on preservation of paper-based material, books and documents. The problem with paper is that a lot of paper was made with a process that left residual acid in the paper. This is really a worldwide problem. If you neutralize the acid in the paper, then the paper will last for hundreds of years. So that's what we do here. We have our own plants in the Netherlands and in Japan, but we also have sold technology to customer sites. So we actually have 8 operating locations right now around the world. We sell equipment, and then we have an ongoing sale of chemistry that's moving. It's all produced in the U.S. and sold overseas. And so that's been a terrific source of new revenue for us to help fund our additional efforts here. In terms of locating in these countries or finding partners, it's very important that we have some understanding of what's going on in those countries. There we rely pretty heavily on the Commerce Department and the Commercial Service. Well, it's almost always our first call, in fact. They help us locate funding sources in terms of banks, attorneys. They give us advice on export controls. It's always a question of, can we work in this region safely? Is there anything we should try to avoid when we move into a region? This plant is the largest in the world doing what it does, and it's a fairly small footprint operating out of a relatively small facility north of Pittsburgh. So if a company was interested in exporting, it wouldn't be dissuaded by their size, and I wouldn't be dissuaded by what might seem like a difficult thing to go overseas. It's really fairly easy to do it.
My name is Saskia Foley. I am the CEO and President of Radius Corporation. We make toothbrushes, travel cases, flosses, and accessories. Being in Kutztown, we had done a smattering of export, but it hadn't been a real focus for the company. And so part of my sales drive was to really see where we could go with the international part. A friend of mine recommended we work with the U.S. Commercial Service, and that's how I started. And overall, I mean, export is about 14% of our business now, and it's been growing heavily, which is really fantastic. We just hired a new international sales manager to really actually actively go out and seek those territories and work with the U.S. Commercial Service to find partners, which they're awesome at. No one should be scared of smaller companies being able to export. You just have to find the right niche, you have to find the right customer, and you have to find the right distributor, and then build that brand with that proper market entry. The companies that are out there looking for your type of unique product, and they're the ones also very interested in bringing new brands specifically made in USA. And I think export's one of the best things you can do. You know, it's really cool to see that there's this whole other market out there. You can sell to the world, and you don't have to worry so much about just the USA market now. I mean, there's tons of people out there who want your products. All it takes is just figuring out how to get there.
Echo is a 40-person company located in the Pittsburgh area. We're working with the world's leading manufacturers by implementing full marking and traceability systems. Our customers are looking for us to provide service and support beyond just North America. We know we can compete internationally. We just need to have the right partners in place. So we had worked with Catalyst Connection on exporting.
We're a private not-for-profit consulting group that works exclusively with manufacturers to help them improve and grow their business. Dave and I started working together about a year ago on how to significantly grow their business, and international markets was one way that we knew of. So, one, I put them in touch with the U.S. Commercial Service, which has been invaluable.
We've primarily been doing the Gold Key service. It's a process that we realized would have taken us years to shorten it down within a few months. It's amazing.
The culture of the organization to the degree of innovation that they have built into the company, it is thriving, and I'm sure they have a very bright future on the horizon.
I'm Jim Bird, and I'm the CEO and President of Preservation Technologies. Our company is focused on preservation of paper-based material, books and documents. The problem with paper is that a lot of paper was made with a process that left residual acid in the paper. This is really a worldwide problem. If you neutralize the acid in the paper, then the paper will last for hundreds of years. So that's what we do here. We have our own plants in the Netherlands and in Japan, but we also have sold technology to customer sites. So we actually have 8 operating locations right now around the world. We sell equipment, and then we have an ongoing sale of chemistry that's moving. It's all produced in the U.S. and sold overseas. And so that's been a terrific source of new revenue for us to help fund our additional efforts here. In terms of locating in these countries or finding partners, it's very important that we have some understanding of what's going on in those countries. There we rely pretty heavily on the Commerce Department and the Commercial Service. Well, it's almost always our first call, in fact. They help us locate funding sources in terms of banks, attorneys. They give us advice on export controls. It's always a question of, can we work in this region safely? Is there anything we should try to avoid when we move into a region? This plant is the largest in the world doing what it does, and it's a fairly small footprint operating out of a relatively small facility north of Pittsburgh. So if a company was interested in exporting, it wouldn't be dissuaded by their size, and I wouldn't be dissuaded by what might seem like a difficult thing to go overseas. It's really fairly easy to do it.
My name is Saskia Foley. I am the CEO and President of Radius Corporation. We make toothbrushes, travel cases, flosses, and accessories. Being in Kutztown, we had done a smattering of export, but it hadn't been a real focus for the company. And so part of my sales drive was to really see where we could go with the international part. A friend of mine recommended we work with the U.S. Commercial Service, and that's how I started. And overall, I mean, export is about 14% of our business now, and it's been growing heavily, which is really fantastic. We just hired a new international sales manager to really actually actively go out and seek those territories and work with the U.S. Commercial Service to find partners, which they're awesome at. No one should be scared of smaller companies being able to export. You just have to find the right niche, you have to find the right customer, and you have to find the right distributor, and then build that brand with that proper market entry. The companies that are out there looking for your type of unique product, and they're the ones also very interested in bringing new brands specifically made in USA. And I think export's one of the best things you can do. You know, it's really cool to see that there's this whole other market out there. You can sell to the world, and you don't have to worry so much about just the USA market now. I mean, there's tons of people out there who want your products. All it takes is just figuring out how to get there.
MECCO is a 40-person company located in the Pittsburgh area. We're working with the world's leading manufacturers by implementing full marking and traceability systems. Our customers are looking for us to provide service and support beyond just North America. We know we can compete internationally. We just need to have the right partners in place. So we had worked with Catalyst Connection on exporting.
We're a private not-for-profit consulting group that works exclusively with manufacturers to help them improve and grow their business. Dave and I started working together about a year ago on how to significantly grow their business, and international markets was one way that we knew of. So, one, I put them in touch with the U.S. Commercial Service, which has been invaluable.
We've primarily been doing the Gold Key service. It's a process that we realize would have taken us years to shorten it down within a few months. It's amazing.
The culture of the organization to the degree of innovation that they have built into the company. It is thriving, and I'm sure they have a very bright future on the horizon.
I'm Jim Bird, and I'm the CEO and President of Preservation Technologies. Our company is focused on preservation of paper-based material, books and documents. The problem with paper is that a lot of paper was made with a process that left residual acid in the paper. This is really a worldwide problem. If you neutralize the acid in the paper, then the paper will last for hundreds of years. So that's what we do here. We have our own plants in the Netherlands and in Japan, but we also have sold technology to customer sites. So we actually have 8 operating locations right now around the world. We sell equipment, and then we have an ongoing sale of chemistry that's moving. It's all produced in the U.S. and sold overseas. And so that's been a terrific source of new revenue for us to help fund our additional efforts here. In terms of locating in these countries or finding partners, it's very important that we have some understanding of what's going on in those countries. There we rely pretty heavily on the Commerce Department and the Commercial Service. Well, it's almost always our first call, in fact. They help us locate funding sources in terms of banks, attorneys. They give us advice on export controls. It's always a question of, can we work in this region safely? Is there anything we should try to avoid when we move into a region? This plant is the largest in the world doing what it does, and it's a fairly small footprint operating out of a relatively small facility north of Pittsburgh. So if a company was interested in exporting, it wouldn't be dissuaded by their size, and I wouldn't be dissuaded by what might seem like a difficult thing to go overseas. It's really fairly easy to do it.
Hello and welcome to the 2016 International Trade Forum, brought to you by Maryland, D.C. District Export Council. My name is Kelly Leonard, and I am your moderator for this panel on export resources. During this segment, we'll introduce you to some local resources to help you to understand their services as you seek to expand your business globally. Immediately following our panel discussion, participants here in our live studio will have an opportunity to engage with the speakers as well as with our other resource partners for networking and more targeted assistance. So for those of you that are joining us online, that's the benefit of being here. So to begin our discussion, I'd like to introduce you to our wonderful panel. For over 30 years, Kyle Bayless has brought his thought leadership in the areas of business management, consulting, high-tech, innovation, and market strategies to small businesses. Kyle is the regional director for the Maryland Small Business Development Center Corridor region, located at the University of Maryland's College Park and Baltimore campuses. Mark Rice is the president of Baltimore-based Maritime Applied Physics Corporation. Mark formed the company after working for the Navy as a civilian engineer and has overseen the company's growth from a one-person operation to its current operation of over 60 staff. MAPC has performed work for sponsors in South Korea, France, Scotland, Germany, the Netherlands, and in Italy. Mark has served on the Maryland District Export Council for 10 years, where he provides pro bono consulting services to companies seeking to increase their business exporting. Julie Close oversees the delivery of SBA's programs and services within the greater DC area. Prior to joining SBA as the Deputy District Director, Julie was an international trade specialist with the Michigan Small Business Development Center, where she co-authored the book Trade Secrets, the Export Answer Book. And finally, Carla Menendez-McManus is a commercial officer serving at the Maryland U.S. Export Assistance Center in Baltimore. She covers information communication technology, design and construction, and the healthcare sectors. Carla also oversees Montgomery County's business and government sectors. Carla comes from the U.S. Department of State, where she was a foreign affairs officer. So welcome to our panelists. So I'm going to start with just a general question for all of you. Briefly share with us information about your organization and the services that you provide to exporters. Kyle?
Okay. Kyle Bayless again. I'm with the Maryland Small Business Development Center. We're located at the University of Maryland and the University of Baltimore. Our primary focus is on small businesses, and one of the things we offer is we offer free one-on-one counseling at no cost. Our whole thing is about starting businesses and trying to help them grow and expand, and to really look at their capacity to do various types of business development. We also offer training in all various areas, but our primary focus, which is a little bit different from the rest of the people here, is we're just focused on it doesn't matter what you're really getting into. It's about business expansion, and are you prepared for business expansion?
Awesome, thank you.
Kelly, thanks. So the District Export Council is a group of 30 people who are appointed by the U.S. Secretary of Commerce, and our function is to reach out to the community of small and mid-sized businesses and provide some mentoring activities. You heard from Sierra Silkman and Carl Livesay earlier today. They're both DEC members. And we support the local U.S. Department of Commerce Export Assistance Center, which Carla represents, in their function to try to increase U.S. exports, to try to improve the balance of trade. So we act as sort of a unofficial but official group that can act on things that are not possible sometimes by government employees, but are probably necessary to do out in the field. So we sponsor a number of things, and we act as a nonprofit volunteer organization of 30 people.
Good morning, everyone. With the Small Business Administration, and more specifically the local district office, so we cover pretty much metropolitan Washington, D.C. And we are your small business liaison with the government. We do all things small business, including exporting, and we like to say pretty much everything we do fits into our 3 C's, whether it's be counseling through, especially through organizations like Kyle's, capital, and contracting, government contracting. So we'll talk a little bit more about, you've heard some of the capital things from Bill, and there's some more about the counseling side from Kyle.
Carla?
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you all for joining us today. So I'm here on behalf of the U.S. Commercial Service, and we are part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. We are an extensive network of trade professionals located throughout the United States. Here in Maryland, we have an office in Baltimore, but our office, covers the entire state. So regardless of where you are, we will find you and we will work with you. We also have offices in over 80 countries worldwide, based in embassies and consulates. So I think that's enough for now.
Okay, awesome. So Kyle, you caught me at free resources, right? That's you're talking the love language of small business. So take us through the process, the typical process that a company would go through in terms of working with your organization.
Okay. A lot of times we get referrals from other organizations that are here for those companies that aren't quite ready or don't look like they're export ready to start. And the way we approach it, and really what they want us to focus on, is their capacity and their ability to actually export. So we do a thorough assessment, and that's what we do really well, is an assessment of do they have the money and the resources, do they have the commitment to consider exporting. The other thing too that we're trying to promote is just trying to encourage small businesses to start exporting. And so we kind of start even before the assessment part, and that is just to try to have small businesses understand that you can expand your business in different ways. Back in 2008, when the recession started, we had a lot of small businesses come to us and say, I want to do government contracting. So they weren't looking for it as an opportunity in government contracting. We applied the same rules to exporting. You have to look at it. You can't look at it as a way to shore up your business. You have to look at it as an opportunity to expand your business. So we feel like we're the first level of education, and we actually work with a lot of the international and export resources in this room in co-counseling and meeting with them, as well as bringing our clients in to make sure they understand what they're getting into, and then also we walk them through the steps. A lot of times they may be referred to just one agency, and that agency is not, they may have skipped a couple of steps before they got there. So we want to bring them back down to, is this good for your business? Will you be able to profit from this? Will this expand your business? And of course, then we go through all the process of, it's like creating a whole business. So we go through the process of business planning, all the marketing, all the things they need to do that are important to understand the cost of doing this. And not go in it with expectations of manage your expectations of how much it might cost. So don't underfund yourself, and then don't have too high expectations as far as what you might earn from this.
Okay. And so part of what you mentioned earlier, you said encouraging small businesses or encouraging businesses to export. What can be done to continue in that same vein of encouraging more small and medium-sized businesses to consider exporting?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges, and I like to use the quote, I think it was Henry Miller who said that what separates America is not the oceans, but it's the way we think. Mm. And so I think I paraphrased that a little bit. But the idea is, I think most small businesses in this country think I can make it here and not have to worry about abroad. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really it's a cultural shift. It's trying to, it's a marketing thing as well. We can't just say 95% of your customers are outside the United States. Mm-hmm. I don't think that really resonates with them. So we need to create a better way to communicate and to encourage exporting. The other thing that we find is, and I'll use a client that I had several years ago who was from an Eastern European country who had immigrated to the United States. And actually I was working with him through his nano business, his nanotechnology business. And he said, well, by the way, I'm trying to export California wines back to my country. Mm. And so then we started getting into that. And we discussed distributors and funding and all those kinds of things. And we eventually got him an SBA Express loan for buying inventory. But the key in all that is he's a first generation. Wow. So he wasn't afraid to do this. Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of the mindset that we have to try to have people think about taking some chances and going outside the borders.
Okay, awesome. And now, so Kyle mentioned some SBA resources. So Julie, question to you. What tools does SBA offer to small businesses that are considering exporting?
Right, thank you. As anyone who's probably tried to explore export resources knows, when it comes to the federal government, there's a lot of people, a lot of agencies offering support. So SBA's kind of niche, if you will, in the export world is financing. You heard from Bill on the last panel about some of the financing tools and things we do. But we also, because we are here to support small business in general, we do try to play the role of liaison with other organizations, whether it be commerce, and we're co-located in many of the export assistance centers with them, or if they need the more hands-on counseling that might be appropriate for a small business development center like Kyle, SCORE, or one of our other counseling resources. So we financing is kind of the niche product you will see from SBA, niche support. But then if you come to our website, if you stumble upon us through any other web channels, we really try to make sure that you get linked to the information and the resources that you need. And so you'll see a wealth of information on our website. We do have actually a tool that's available free for download. It's an export business planner. So if you just go to sba.gov/export business planner as one word, you'll find the download there, and it's very detailed. It's actually a great complement, I think, to your basic guide to exporting, because it's more of a like a workbook approach. So to really help you do that assessment, see if you're really ready. then start going through all the different steps and phases and have you thought about it, help you put the plan together so that when you go talk to somebody like Kyle, you've got some information and some resources. So start with our website, or if you need financing right away, you can go right to Bill.
And so you mentioned SCORE.
Yes.
For someone that doesn't know what SCORE is, can you describe what is SCORE and then how do they provide free assistance to businesses?
Sure. SCORE, many people might have known them. They used to go by Service Corps of Retired Executives. And so these are men and women who are largely retired, but volunteer their time and expertise. So they provide, again, free business counseling. You can make an appointment with the SCORE counselor, and a lot of times they'll try to match you with the person who maybe has been in the industry or has worked and has a skill for your particular need. So if exporting is the concern, they'll probably try to match you with people who have exported in the past, and potentially in your industry even, so that you can get the benefit of having someone who's been there and done that kind of expertise, and it's almost more of a mentoring relationship. So.
Okay. Now, Mark, in previous panels there was reference to export tech, and so what is export tech, and then what can I expect in terms if I were to enroll in that type of service?
So Export Tech was born out of a Baltimore experience where a company went overseas and probably made all the mistakes that you can make when you try to export, including losing their line of credit. And I happened to be the CEO of that company when it happened, so I had some personal experience. So we went to the USIAC, and both the SBA and the USIAC helped us out of that mess. And as a result of it, it became real clear that a lot of companies are in this situation. You sort of blunder into an exporting situation. In our case, it was a $2.4 million contract when we were a $4 million company. So it was a huge opportunity, but we made a lot of mistakes. And so the intent here of Export Tech was to try to formulate something that would take a group of small businesses together through the development of an export plan that was unique to their needs. Because between the healthcare and the defense industries and the IT and the service and the products, there are huge differences between companies and different markets and different financing needs. And so we really felt you needed to tailor that. So we take 10 companies at a time through a 3-month process. And this is really funded in part by the Department of Commerce, in part by the state of Maryland. So the tuitions are very minimal. And in the 3 sessions, you have a lot of homework between the 3 sessions. But by the end of the 3rd session, you have an export plan that's really tailored for your industry, your business, your financial situation. And then we try to take you on a trade mission. So if you've identified Argentina as your export opportunity and you're going to sell, platelets from blood to Argentina, we'll try to connect you with the USIAC and with the state of Maryland and with the SBA, all working together to specific opportunities in Argentina to sell platelets. And we'll try to walk you through everything you need to know up front to do that. The onus is still on you to do the work, but we'll do everything we can to help collectively prepare you for that opportunity.
So is it an application process, or how does it work?
If you talk to Carla or Yolanta here at the U.S. Export Assistance Center, they can take your application. And we will be doing a session this year on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, and perhaps a second one in this area. So it generally happens once or twice per year.
Awesome. So Carla, how can the Export Assistance Center help companies find new international partners? Because we hear a lot about how relationships are really important and building a strong team, and it's a team sport. How do we leverage what you all do to help us to identify those potential new international partners?
Sure, thank you for the question. So as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we are an extensive network, and we have offices not only across the United States, but in over 80 countries worldwide. So we have commercial diplomats there, as well as local specialists who really specialize in a wide number of sectors and subsectors. And most of them are from these markets, or all of them really. So they're very plugged in, not only culturally but technically, they understand your sector. That's what they focus on day in and day out. Their job is to grow their network in order to facilitate that search or that matchmaking that we work hard to help you achieve. So we offer for many services, but the 4 general categories, to give you an idea, is trade counseling, business matchmaking, market intelligence, and commercial advocacy. So anywhere from just simple guidance that you may need to something more technical. We talked a lot about freight forwarding, for example, customs, specific to the particular market that you're interested in. The matchmaking services, we spoke earlier about Gold Key service. That's probably one of our most popular ones. We work with a company to assess, if the market is right for you and if there's potential for you in the countries that you're interested in. And then we work with our colleagues in these markets that we're considering, and they'll screen these potential clients or partners, distributors in these countries, and then we take it from there. You do a country visit, but we'll also offer a lot of additional services with the focus on matching you to a potential client or partner. I don't know if I think that should suffice.
So that sounds like a lot of great benefits that you all provide. Now, is there a set of requirements or guidelines, anything that is required of me as a company in order to tap into those types of services?
So sure. So I'm thrilled that Kyle's here with us, because we do often get calls from companies that really aren't ready, that are just thinking they have an idea to start a business, or haven't been in business that long, or maybe they have but they don't have a good grasp on what their exporting plan is going to be, or what they envision. So that's, I think, where the SBDC and SBA really has a huge role. So in terms of our criteria, we prefer to work with companies that are established, that have been in business for some time, that are doing, know what they're doing and doing it well here in the U.S. Because it'll just be not necessarily easier, but the transition won't be as disastrous for you. And of course, we want you to be successful. And more importantly, if you're looking at such a competitive world, so if you're looking to compete in these new markets, you have to bring your A game. So
beautiful. And so, of course, I was focusing on all the different free services and all that good stuff, but we know that there is a cost to exporting. So, Mark, if I'm new to exporting, what sort of budget do you think I should set aside in order to prepare myself to enter new markets?
So I think the budget starts out very modest, and it grows as you get your commitment and your plan together. And I think the beauty of having a well-developed plan is you'll know pretty much before you execute the plan how much it's going to cost. But I think if you want to get into exporting, as Carla said, if you've had some track record in the U.S., if you can set aside an initial $5,000, you can probably get through the process of really developing an export plan, using the many assets that you've heard about this morning. It's a team sport. Tap into all those, refine your plan, understand your markets, know where you're going, what your objectives are. And at that point, you've got to go overseas generally, or you've certainly got to find an agent in a country. At that point, the costs start to go up a little bit, and you're going to have to assess the risk-reward benefits as you go. And you may get to the $5,000 point and pull back. You may say, and that's a success. I mean, if you've really looked in the mirror and you've decided, I can't do this, and you've spent $5,000, you're still way ahead as opposed to getting in over your head. So it's a process, it's a step. Mm-hmm. And how much, if you're going to be an aerospace manufacturer and sell to Brazil, you may end up spending $100,000 to do that. If you're trying to sell, a plant product in Asia that's where the market's very receptive to that particular product, your $5,000 in an internet connection may do it.
Mm-hmm.
So it varies widely.
So what is this $5,000 exactly? Like, what is it covering? Is it covering consulting to get your business plan ready, or what is it?
So depending on the process you use, it's the cost of your labor to go out and spend time with the experts that you need to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And most of those experts are free.
Okay.
I mean, your first step should not be to hire a consultant. It ought to be use the government resources that are at your hand. I mean, if the IRS is on one end of the scale, these guys that I'm sitting with here on the other end, they really are here to help you. And unmatched in any place in the world will you find the number and depth of services that are provided to you as a U.S. business to help you export. So take advantage of that, I guess is the message.
Okay. And so you alluded to also, and I think another piece of it is the whole trade missions and that how can your agencies assist the small businesses in the room or watching online in terms of identifying or being involved in trade missions? Is there some sort of formal process that they have to go through, or what does that look like?
So I'll kick it off. So trade missions, as you can imagine, we host a lot of trade missions in all of our countries. And we even host them here in the United States. As I mentioned, we have offices throughout the United States. So we always encourage our companies to attend these trade missions. Let's say, for example, we just had Trade Winds is what the name we use for it. We had one in Latin America, and last year we had one in Africa. But the most recent one we had was in Latin America, and we've focused on a couple of countries. We didn't go to all of them, but we went to a couple like Chile, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, and I think Mexico was also included. So you would just apply, and you would fill out sort of an application, which is free. And the advantage is that my colleagues in the countries that are hosting the trade mission would do a market assessment, and they'll tell you, your sector, your product, your service, it's just not what's hot right now or what the market needs. Or they'll say it is, and these are the pros and cons, this is the potential here, and then you make a decision based on this market assessment. There is a fee. Most of our services, Kelly had mentioned that, we offer a lot of services that are not always free, and they're not, but the cost is very minimal. It's really just to cover overhead administrative costs and to fund some of these trade missions and trade fairs that we host. But yes, so you would fill out the application, do a market assessment, you would determine whether you wanted to go or not. You pay for your lodging and the flight, and then just the basic costs to participate. But I should mention, and I know we're going to touch on this, the state of Maryland Department of Commerce, unfortunately they weren't able to join us because we had to change the date, so for unforeseen reasons they're not here. But they also offer fantastic and complimentary services to y'all. And we work very closely together. And so, for instance, if you're interested to go to the trade mission and you're ready to go, they have this competitive grant program that's basically they'll reimburse you up to $6,000 in expenses. And you would apply. It's on a rotating basis, pretty much every quarter or so. And you can use it for our services and other services that they offer or that you found on your own.
Awesome. Others?
I'm just going to piggyback exactly what you said. The SBA actually has a STEP grant program, which is for state government, and Maryland is a recipient. And through that, I would say if you're looking for a trade mission or some additional resources, you might want to check your state government to see if they have the STEP program. And a lot of times they'll help fund your trade activities, whether it be actually going on a trade mission, maybe it's just doing some of the market research, leveraging Gold Key and some of the other resources at Commerce. So if you're not sure if your state government has a program, you can check on our website, and we'll tell you exactly if you do and who the point of contact is. And it's just sba.gov/STEP, STEP.
Just very quickly, if you don't mind, I forgot to mention, and I don't know if we actually define what a trade mission is, but so basically we would, as I mentioned, we'd focus on certain regions, and what we usually do, it's not always the case, but we find that this is pretty successful models where you have a business forum in one country, and then from there you have several stops, mission stops in the other countries that are participating. And we also include these business matchmaking services with potential partners, clients, distributors in the countries that you've chosen to go. And so a question we often get was, well, what's the advantage? Like, why would I do this as opposed to just doing a gold key service? While they're both good, the trade missions do provide a lot of advantages, and very briefly includes, first of all, you're part of a delegation, so a lot of you are doing business domestically as well, so you never know who you're going to meet on this delegation. Second, you have a big team organizing this, and you get to meet the team, the commercial diplomats and the specialists in these countries who you would be working with anyway, but you'll get to meet them face to face. You'll have the gold key service included in the trade mission, the matchmaking service. And in these forums, they often invite high-level government and private sector representatives. So you'll also get to interact with these folks and do additional networking. So yes, that's all.
Beautiful. And so I want to begin opening up the floor to questions. So if you are in the television studio and have a question, please proceed to the back so that we can get your questions answered. So Mark, putting on your deck hat, I guess, how do we find export opportunities? And then what resources are there to help us to find them? So how do we find them, and are there resources available for us?
So I'd start by saying that a lot of our competing countries do this as well or better than we do. So a lot of foreign governments really get involved in interactively finding export opportunities for their companies and actually taking them to the table. As a democracy, we don't do that as readily as a dictatorship might, for instance. But in the world of social media, things are changing rapidly. 10 years ago, it was pretty hard to find an export opportunity without going through a commercial service officer in the country or knowing somebody in a foreign company. Today, it's much different, and it's changing very rapidly. So one of the things we'll be doing this year as a DEC is introducing a program to try to identify the top 50 exportable products in a particular sector. And we're then going to take those 50 top Maryland products, and we're going to push them forward to all the foreign service, the commercial service officers and the state officer representatives in those foreign markets. So it's both a push-pull process, and we'll try as a DEC to do a sector each year. So we'll probably start with defense, which is one of the bigger sectors in Maryland. We'll probably move into healthcare, and we'll each year, working with our partners, we're going to try to canvass the state, find those products that are most exportable, and then push them forward as hard as we can. So to answer the question, it's really a combination of what you do as a company through your website, your social media, how much you enlist the commercial service on Gold Key or the state, doing the trade winds missions, going out and finding these customers for yourself, going to trade shows, but then also participating in these state activities that are really trying to push state-specific economic development.
Now, and you mentioned social media, and so in this technology age and all that good stuff, and the fact that it is a push and pull in identifying opportunities, how do we as Maryland companies, or is there anything that you all will do to help us to legitimize potentially illegitimate or scams? Because we all have been sitting at our desk and you get this email from a foreign country and, oh, we're looking to do this. How do your agencies help us to determine the scams from actual valid opportunities?
Yes. Okay, I'll kick it off. So due diligence, and this is a common question we get. We often get emails, including from our offices overseas in the embassies and consulates, and they'll ask us the same thing. they'll say, you know, our company, you have a local client here, and, you know, XYZ contacted me, do they exist? And sometimes that's a challenge, you know, trying to find that, but that's what we do, and they do that on their end as well. They'll do a due diligence, and if you want something really extensive, we can do that. You know, like if you know they're pitching a really attractive deal that you really you want to look into, we can certainly help with that.
Awesome. Any other?
Yeah, I'll just add that getting back to trade missions, it kind of overlaps a little bit. One of the things that we do at the SBDC is we work with the Maryland Department of Commerce, as well as a lot of the EDCs, the economic development corporations in each of the counties, which are also promoting trade delegations. In a previous life, I was actually involved in a lot of delegations and working with China. And I got to the point of trying to find the right people to work with. I found the right people to work with in China, who I would assist in recruiting people to go on this trip, these delegation trips. And it was all about trade and capacity and what they can do and all the incentives that the Chinese government might offer. And of course, we go to cities like Suzhou and Wuhan and Hangzhou, which are 13, 15 million populations, which most Americans have never heard of.
Right.
So when you think of China, you can't think of China. You got to think of maybe just one single market. But it was a great way for a lot of the people that I referred to the program just to get out there. You know, it's just you just get the feeling of what it feels like to be in another country and talking to somebody on the other side. And there was some matchmaking. One delegation actually resulted in us assisting a client on a joint venture in China. And to sort of show how we overlap in different areas, when he said he wanted to do this joint venture, I said, well, you need a lawyer. and so he says, well, is there anything that I can help you with? And I said, well, let me check SCORE and see if they have any subject matter experts. And it turns out that they had an international lawyer. So we co-counseled with him, and he learned a lot of things, a lot of questions that he needed to ask. And I'm sure we saved him thousands of dollars when he finally talked to that attorney.
Wow, nice. Awesome. Question?
Good afternoon to the panel. My name is Brett Mollison. I'm with XCBG. I'm Director of County Affairs in Montgomery County. I'd like to thank the panel for your efficient and very concise overview of each of your services. My question is as follows. It's actually more of an international skewed question, and it is directly to the Gold Key services. To what degree would you say that your due diligence and or scrubbing of potential partners would be, first and foremost? Secondly, I'm very familiar, having lived abroad myself, and understanding the processes that EXIM Bank goes through from a purchase order, and in terms of understanding the lending capacity based upon the credibility of said companies. That being said, from a financial perspective, where do you, take the lead, since you would be the lead introducer to said companies?
Sure. Well, I would say that our screening process is pretty spot on. It's pretty good. It's very good. But I recall Mary in the trade finance section mentioning that you can find the perfect partner and everything's great, and there could be an incident where they may not pay, and just kind of out of the blue. So I would say that, is it 100% hazardous free? I can't answer that, but I would say that we do an excellent job screening potential clients and customers, because we want you to be successful. We don't want you to come in there and do all this work and fail. It's not good for us, and it's not good for you. So we do take a lot of pride in that process.
I could give you a couple stories from a company's perspective. I mean, we've done it a couple times, and in one case, I was given, it was an electric motor project in China, and the commercial service officer who we met with arranged for me to have the personal cell phone numbers of the General Motors and Chrysler representatives in China. and suggested that I call them and talk to them about the project. So it's that level of personal service. And the other one, I guess, would be in South America, where we were planning a trip, and they basically set everything up. I mean, we had meetings in the embassy, we had meetings with key people in Petrobras, the big oil company. They arranged for drivers in country to move us around the country. We got briefed in the embassy before we went out on the street and started interacting on some of the cultural issues. So I would say it's both having a validated business contact, but it's also the arm around the shoulder telling you how to approach that contact, how to do the logistics in that country. It's pretty awesome. So I would say the Gold Key is one of the greatest U.S. services. I think it's in the order of $600 or.
Right. Yes, it's for new clients it's $350, and for existing, once you do your first one, it's $700. And again, the Maryland's Department of Commerce, we collaborate with them, so they cover some of those costs. So you can get assistance there. Yes.
Great. And my follow-up question would be the following, since you mentioned manufacturing. I have a water purification company that I'm in the process of augmenting sales in 15 countries. I am looking for new manufacturers in Ghana and Mexico. So understanding political risk and understanding fraudulent activity, especially and unfortunately in African countries, not so much as Ghana, but not to mention any names, but we know that it exists and it is thriving as we speak. That being said, I'm very much interested in looking for a manufacturer, specifically, let's say in Ghana. And from a preliminary perspective, I'd like to know, you're not looking at their financial statement. You're doing some form of analysis that will guarantee, well, not guarantee, but give me comfort in dealing with this new opportunity.
Sure. So I would say that this would be a conversation we would have to have with my colleagues in Ghana or whatever country you guys are interested. I can't give you like a general statement and say, yes, we can do this, or so. And I think that's a good segue, just so you know, whether you have a question, any other technical question in terms of, how do I know, how do I find the right freight forwarder, or how do I find a partner, for example, or get a good landscape on the country. It just depends on the country. There's no, one answer for every market. So we would have a conversation, an introductory call, take your information, your organization's information. Is very important to know what your exporting interests are, your competition here, as well as those countries that you're considering. Your sector, again, is your sector thriving in this country? Is it not? What could some of the challenges be? And I would say that, I think sometimes it's not so great to hear, especially if you're thinking of a country that maybe sounds a little sexy and you want to go in there and explore. But my colleagues are often pretty blunt, and they will say, I don't think your market or your particular company would do so well here, or it could, but it would take a little more work. So definitely, we'll give you that type of information. But going back to your question, we'd be happy to have that conversation. I'm not an expert in all of my markets, but luckily we have an extensive network. So, and whatever country you're interested in, we can have that conversation and determine whether it's a good match for you. One thing I wanted to quickly mention as well that I didn't touch on in the beginning is, in addition to our offices throughout the U.S. and overseas in the embassies and consulates, we also have representation in the multilateral development banks. And I'm sure all of you are familiar with them. We're in Maryland, very close to D.C. So, for example, the Inter-American Development Bank, the World Bank, we also have the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, based in London, but we have an office here as well, and the bank does. The Asian Development Bank and the African Development Bank. So and sometimes that's a good transition if you're not ready to, pursue clients, partners on your own, and you'd like to go through these development banks that also, provide a cushion or a soft landing, you can do that, and we can have that conversation with my colleagues.
Thank you again for all panelists.
So Carla, you alluded to perhaps a process. So paperwork. What types of paperwork would I need to be prepared to provide you or any organization that's represented here for that matter in order to begin doing work with you?
Thank you. So basically, we asked, it's a basic profile questionnaire intake form where you would include as much information on your company and your sector and your exporting interests, if you have any particular markets in mind. If you don't and you're just open, obviously we want to help focus you, and for many reasons. So we could take a couple of different approaches, but this form, paperwork, I would say, is very important to start. And really, that is one of that's the starting piece there. And as I mentioned, we really, it's very important for you to be pretty well established, or and if you don't have to have, you haven't had to have exported, but it certainly helps. So I think that's it.
Okay. Any other requirements for any of the other organizations that are represented?
I think it really depends with SBA on what particular service or activity you're hoping to engage with. So there's not any one generic intake form that would be required, but if you're looking at financing, obviously there's going to be paperwork provided from the lender and some other things. If you're looking to work with some of our counseling services like a Kyle, they may have an intake form to help them better assess you from day one. So it's really going to vary, but conversation is always free. So if you want to pick up the phone or send an email, we're happy to try to steer you in the right direction and let you kind of be prepared for what you might need to do next.
Okay, thank you. Question?
Yes, once again, this is Gabe Omar with the Maryland Small Business Center, Small Business Development Center. So question to you, Mark, what are the requirements for the tech program for a client who comes to me? And to you, Carla, the question is, with regard to market intelligence, do you guys provide reports to the clients so we can refer them to you guys? Mark first.
So in export tech, we're looking for a company that has some experience in selling a product or service in the U.S., wants to export, and is willing to engage a C-level executive for 3 full days over 3 months and to do the homework. So this is sort of the entry bar. If you're willing to commit to us, then we'll bring a lot of free resources and commit to you our free time to help you. But you've got to commit, and you've got to be serious. Second thing is, when we cluster companies together, we look for non-competing companies, because in the process of developing a business plan, we're going to ask you for a lot of proprietary information. It really gets to the nuts and bolts of how your business runs, including your financials. And if you're going to expose that information to your peers, we want to make sure you're not running into a competitive position. And the third thing is, you've just got to be open. I mean, if people are going to reach out and help you, you've got to be really receptive to it. And if you meet those criteria in the eyes of the Export Assistance Center, then you're probably in. And if it's a timing problem, we'll push you to the next class or something. But it's
So it doesn't matter if the company is a startup or established?
If it's a startup, I'm sure Carla's going to ask you some tough questions. And depending on the answers to those questions, you may or may not get in, right? But you've got to have enough of a concept of what you want to do, and USIAC has to feel that that's somewhat viable. Doesn't have to be proven, but it has to be viable. And we don't want to turn the next Facebook away as a startup, right?
But ExperTech is a great program, and because they're very fortunate to have the deck and Mark and Carl as part of the deck. And I encourage all of you to take a look at their website for information on events and workshops And of course, all of our websites with the export plan application, as well as ours. On export.gov, for example, touching on market intelligence, you can find a lot of valuable information, free reports. One other thing I didn't mention in terms of this extensive network is obviously we're part of the U.S. Department of Commerce, and we have a headquarters in D.C. So we have a lot of support from our colleagues there as well, who produce reports. One, for example, is called the Top Market Reports, and we do them on a variety of sectors, of top sectors. Not every single one, but the top ones, and including some of the subsectors like healthcare, for example, information communication technology, and the list goes on. So if you go to export.gov, you can search for top markets. Now, if you want some market intelligence on your particular sector and XYZ country, then our colleagues in the embassies and consulates can help with those reports. They also produce something called country commercial guides. That's free, and they have to do this. They have to update it continuously. And so I also encourage you, in addition to checking out our websites, to look at the search for the countries, and we have a list of all of our offices, not only across the U.S. but also overseas, and they have their own websites. So, and they upload a lot of valuable information there, including this commercial country commercial guide, where they'll give you snippets of info on the market, on the industries that are doing really well. Intelligence on ways to do business, etc. And then, of course, if you want something more in depth, then that can be provided as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just add that the SBDC is a nationwide organization. We're also in Puerto Rico and Guam and some other countries. I think there are 300 and something or 600, I forget, 300 and something. Gabe and I work together. So, the disclaimer there, okay? He didn't ask me the question. That was the good thing. And so we have a special accreditation to be for technology commercialization. And so one of the things we consider is how do they fund it and how do they look for other sources to try to commercialize it. We also work with the universities in a program called Ventures, which has taken all the research and commercialization, technology commercialization organizations on both campuses to focus on trying to develop these businesses and get and provide some commercialization support. So when it comes to occasionally what we run into is a business who can't find that funding or that partner or somebody they can really work with, and sometimes they actually look overseas. And so there's, we have to walk through what is the best opportunity to take your technology overseas, and of course IP is a big, huge concern, and also what kind of ownership relationship you might have. But the key is it may be perfect for their market to develop and sort of beta test and then move it back to the United States once they've developed it. And I've had at least 2 clients do something like that.
Okay, awesome. Kelly, may I mention just 2 quick points? The state of Maryland, as I mentioned, they weren't able to join us, their international office. I touched on Export MD, but I just want to elaborate a little more because I think it's important. So they have the competitive grant program where I mentioned that they reimburse you up to $6,000 in exporting expenses. But they also, as part of this application, you're also eligible to apply for up to 40 hours of assistance, counseling, market intelligence on the markets that you're considering. So, for example, if you already have in mind some trade missions you want to do and some other travel or anything related to trade, you would include a budget in there, and you could also make a request for counseling, but only on those in those countries where they have a presence. And they don't have a presence as extensive as ours, But I think that's the beauty of working collaboratively, that wherever, if anyone's booked up and we have offices in the same country, well then we can share that work. And where they don't have a presence, you can pretty much count on us being there. They also, and so separate from Export MD, they also have about 20 free hours, I believe, that they provide free, again, in those countries that you're interested in. And they cover 2 of our gold keys per year. Not all of it, but there's a good percentage of it. And most recently, they've partnered with the University of Maryland, the Robert Smith Graduate School. And I think Rebecca's here, so you can find her if you want to wave in the back during the lunch networking session, and she can tell you more about it. But essentially, you will, for a very modest cost, you'll have access to a couple of their grad students, and they'll provide a good amount of hours for you on market intelligence. So I just wanted to mention that.
Wonderful. This information has been just priceless. We definitely want to thank you all for your contributions. As we conclude the panel discussion, I'd like to invite our additional resource partners to introduce themselves as we prepare for our networking segment.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marta Jimenez. I work in Maryland Women Business Center. I am the business counselor for Rockville, and actually we have 2 more locations, one in Bowie and another one in Frederick. We provide services, again, like SBDC, consulting services, training, professional training, and at the end we are a very good connector with between our entrepreneur and all those resources. Thank you for this opportunity.
And I should add that the leader of your group used to be an SBDC
exactly,
director.
Kate. Exactly. This is a good introduction. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Maria Jimenez, and I work as a small business coach and trainer at Latino Economic Development Center, or LEDC. We are proud to say that we have 25 years working with low and middle income Latino community and other underserved communities. We have 2 big programs, one in housing, the second one is small business development. I'm here to talk about our service in small business development. We help entrepreneurs to start their businesses and also existing businesses that want to expand and grow. How we do that? Well, we provide trainings in different business areas like finance, marketing, and operations. We also offer counseling one-on-one services in different topics like business plan, business model, marketing strategy, financials, etc. We also offer loans for small businesses. We have 3 offices, one in Baltimore, our headquarters in DC, and an office in Wheaton, Maryland. I'm happy to be here, and I will be happy to meet you at the end of this session. Thank you. Gracias.
And I would like to also add in this one is because you hear the Latino doesn't mean you have to be a Latino. Yeah,
yes.
You can be anybody to actually
Yes,
go to them.
that's true. We serve all communities as well, so thank you. And our service is free. I forgot to mention that. And also bilingual services as well. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ash, and I'm an Executive Vice President at the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce. I encourage you all to go global. We are interested in your expansion and success, and as part of that, we are so excited that Carla has offered and has a standing opening opportunity for everyone. You do not have to be a member of the Montgomery County Chamber. It is offered for free. She has standing hours for every Tuesday and Thursday each month for several hours where you can tap into the Department of Commerce, her expertise and the expertise of commerce to find out how you can enter and expand into global markets. And this is an incredible resource panel right here for you. I encourage you to reach out to all of them. Another way that we help success is through our programming as well as connecting you to mentors. I wish you much success, and please take advantage of the resources today. Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. My name is Leanne Young, and I am the Executive Director for Global Chamber Baltimore. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our organization and some of our services. Global Chamber Baltimore is a chamber-style organization that's focused on engaging companies in more successful cross-border trade and investment. Our members, sponsors, and partners consist of exporters, importers, investors, universities, government agencies, and service providers that help companies with their global business endeavors. Our Global Chamber chapter here in Baltimore is actually part of a worldwide Global Chamber organization that already has chapters in 100 metropolitan areas around the world, and we are on track to grow to about 500 in the next couple of years. In addition to our existing chapters, we also have global trade advisors in many other cities, and that extends our reach through Global Chamber to 190 countries. It is our mission and work to help companies connect and get connected to information and people that can help them be successful globally. And I wanted to stress again, we help them connect from anywhere to everywhere, but we also, we're part of the team too. We work very collaboratively with just about any organization involved in global business, including many of the people that have been here today. I wanted to share with you just a few of our, real quick about just a few of our services. We offer many different things, but we offer strategic connections to just strategic business connections, both globally and locally. We also hold events. Those are live events here in the region, and they are private, public, and collaborator-related events about global business topics. And they include things like roundtables, breakfast sessions, large speaker events, and networking sessions. We have a roundtable coming up focused on, for example, small businesses and women and minority-owned businesses, helping them exporting. That's coming up soon. So that's one of the many things, networking events that we hold monthly as well. We also come from the Global Chamber. We provide worldwide global events, and we have speakers from around the world that are experts in global business, and they share their knowledge. And it also provides an opportunity for the people involved in those to showcase their own businesses on a worldwide stage, on a global stage. So basically, we offer many programs. I'll just leave you with the idea too that we're all here to help everybody, be more successful in the global space. And I'll let you know that, with Global Chamber Baltimore, your Global Chamber membership, it doesn't matter where you join, Baltimore, London, Manila, Sao Paulo, you're a member everywhere. So I'll be here as well. I'd love to talk to you and help you, succeed in your global endeavors. Thank you.
So this concludes the 2016 International Trade Forum. On behalf of the Maryland, D.C. District Export Council, the U.S. Commercial Service, the Export-Import Bank of the United States, the Small Business Administration, and Montgomery Community Media, thank you for joining us.
They give us advice on export controls. It's always a question of
The University of Maryland